Yeah.
Can you imagine a time now that Ed Sheeran was cool?
I
Fun.
love beer.
First of all, why the fuck are you at dinner with your dentist?
I will not stand for a disrespect of Stephen Sondheim.
Je m'appelle Carley.
Allons-y, bitch.
Allons-y, bitch.
Ahoy! Welcome back to Girl Historians.
I'm Carly.
I'm Blair.
And this is the comedy podcast where we talk about girls and history. Wait, whoa.
Yeah,
We talk
what?
about history
We
and our
talk-
girls.
But also
we
in
don't
a
talk
real way,
about
we talk
girls
about
and our
girls.
history.
Okay, but
I mean,
we
in a way.
we also talk about girls, and it's
We are history.
and
in
we're
a way.
we're talking about girls. I love to talk
Wow.
about the girls and the girls in history. It's a huge, multifaceted thing.
Honestly.
Just so much happening.
It really is emblematic of my mindset, like starting out immediately, switching around words. But I'm honestly in better spirits than I feel like happened on the past couple episodes.
Okay, that's
The past
beautiful.
couple episodes, both of us, it's like we're like, ha 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 ha. But seriously,
But on a much more real note, I'm doing very badly.
very badly.
Yeah, it's hard. I've realized that I think I just kind of like, I think I said this on the last episode too. I don't think that I like vibe with August.
August is over.
It's giving December of summer. It's giving like, especially the weather, like,
Or like March. It's like,
Yeah.
what is this?
but like
Why are we here?
At least March, I feel like is miserable, but I always have some sort of like career thing going on.
I also really do experience, and this is not a misuse of the term mania, but it's the same thing as like seasonal depression. I
Mhm.
experience like seasonal mania in spring because I know it will get warm again.
Yes.
Like nothing can stop me.
Mhm.
So even though it is miserable in March or April, I'm still like, but she's coming around the corner.
Yeah.
But now it's done. I don't want, I'm done with August. We're recording this on August 29th and we're almost done. We've almost made it. And I really think September is going to be magical for us. I can feel it.
I know. I'm excited for September. Also, we're out of Mercury retrograde, which I feel like
Thank
was
God.
really wreaking havoc on me. I felt like I could not communicate a single thing
Communicate
all
to
month.
save a life.
No, I
Yeah.
really couldn't. And like, I don't mean to be dramatic. I don't find I'm usually very affected by Mercury retrograde. Sometimes I like it. I find it very reflective. But like this one was particularly, I was like, oh, I'm suffering.
Yep.
This is not fun.
Well, it's when communication breaks down and you're already in a state, it just becomes incredibly easy to like isolate.
Yes.
I also find with retrograde specifically, the like communication breakdown that I experience sometimes is like in myself.
Yes.
Like I create this, like I have a tendency to like latch on to things that I can't control and be like, oh, if I get this, my life will change and it will actually be perfect. And I'll create this like world in my head in which that happens. And then when it doesn't happen, I'm like wrecked.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's not healthy. Like, that's not a good coping mechanism because in actuality, I'm not like craving that thing. I'm craving what it represents, whether it be like a slower workload or something. You know what I mean? Like, whatever it represents.
No, I felt this so much. I was talking to Gazelle and Sachin the other day. We went to go see a show, Gazelle and Sachin in our improv troupe. Very just like fabulous people to talk to about anything, but they're also just very like down to earth. And we were just kind of like talking like generally, how are you feeling about career things? And I was like, I feel like everything is actually going well for me, but I feel like shit because I'm not booking acting gigs and I can't, it's such a mental barrier.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just can't get past the mental block of not booking acting work, even though I know that there are like so many factors and it's the most unstable industry in the world. And also
Famously,
just like,
that's whenever I feel crazy about that. I'm like, this is a thing that I know to be hard
Yeah.
because everybody talks about how hard it is. And yeah,
I think it's just kind of one of those things that like it's just gonna be a problem always. And c'est la vie. But then that, yeah, I'm ready for September. I've also just
I
like I feel
know.
like I've just been like working. Like I feel like shining. I'm like Jack. I'm like, oh, I'll work, no play. Like blah,
Makes
blah.
Blair a dull girl.
I feel really dull. Like even last
Yeah.
night, I was like, "Oh, I should go out, I should do something," and then there were no movies playing, and I didn't really wanna go to, like, a social, like or any movies I wanted to see. I didn't wanna see
Mm.
fucking there's a lot of horror movies out right now, and I'm not huge on horror movies, unpopular opinion.
You should check out, Imagine, like the Carlton Cinemas, not to dox, but they play a bunch of whack movies. I don't love that theater necessarily, um, but they'll play, like, crazy random movies, like Austin Powers. They're playing the Harry Potter movies week by
Yeah,
week
I
right
saw that they were
now.
playing Goblet of Fire. Honestly, I just hate that part of town, not to be a princess, but, like, ugh, I
No, this is what I'm saying, like, I know, because also I love to get blasted and see a movie. I love to get so high, like, stoned,
Yeah.
and to see a movie, like, it's the same thing as going to, like, Yonge and Dundas Square, which is, like, Toronto's Times Square kind of thing. It's not as crazy as Times Square, but it's very busy
It's
and
almost
horrible
worse
vibes.
because it's
Yeah,
uglier.
because it's not even a tourist attraction, it's just ugly.
Yeah, at least, like, in
Like
Times Square, you're like, Concrete jungle where dreams are made,"
yes.
and then in Yonge and Dundas Square, you're just like, "Oh my god," I don't know if I told this story in the podcast, but we were going to a movie at Yonge and Dundas Square, and a brown liquid fell on my hand and
Oh,
started burning.
yes,
It was crazy. It
and it
was like
burned.
out of the sky, it burned, and
That was
I was trying
crazy.
to be chill about it, but I was like, something just fell on me," and I thought it was, like, bird shit or whatever, and then I looked around, no birds, not a bird in the sky, the birds avoid it, obviously, and then I was like, it started burning, and so I went to the Starbucks, I was like, "Do you have a bathroom?" They were like, "No." I was like, "Fuck you
Well,
guys, I'm
first of all, you
my
do.
skin's
Like,
burning."
first of all, you do. Like, legally, you do. Like, this is what drives me insane about that, is I'm like, if you serve in Canada, I don't know if it's the same at other places. If you serve food and drink, you legally have to have a
Yeah,
washroom. So I don't
literally.
know what this song and dance is, because I wanna be like, well, legally, you actually have to.
I can
You just
imagine
don't you just wanna
I
criminalize being
know.
homeless. Like, that's all you're
I
interested in.
know, and I understand, like, it must be hell, like, I would not be the person who wants to, like, get someone out of the bathroom who's, like, doing
No,
drugs or whatever,
I know.
like, I understand it, but I'm also, like, I'm coming in and I'm just like, "Hey, my hand is burning
My
from a
hand is
liquid that fell from the sky."
This brown liquid fell from the sky, and it's burning me. Can I please wash my hands?
And then so I went up to them and I was like, "Oh, well, could I have, like, a cup of water?" And they were like, "Oh, sure." And then they were like, "Do you want ice?" I'm like, "No, I need water on my burning hand." It
I
was
forgot about that.
I think of it
But
every
yeah,
day of
all
my
that's to
life.
say, if you get really high and then see a movie at the Cineplex in Yonge and Dundas Square, that Carlton one too, and then you
Mhm.
walk out and it's just rancid vibes, like, it feels really
Yes.
fucked, you
Mhm.
know? It's, like, too busy, somebody is screaming at you because of religion,
Yeah.
like, there's
Which is
9 different
cool.
people with mics,
Yeah.
warring religions, truly, the Crusades. 2.0, 3.0, how many have there been?
I don't
But
even know.
it's just like it's an assault on the senses.
Yeah.
My
Can I say
mailman's here.
your mailman? The
What were you gonna say?
I was gonna say I don't know much about the Crusades at all.
I
I,
remember there is children's crusades. That stuck with me. Because I remember learning about the Crusades because I wanted to take AP US history
mm,
when I was in grade
and you needed
10.
the Crusades to get to
But I didn't
America.
get into it because my
Oh,
history teacher was a fucking dick. I hate him.
ew.
He didn't wanna do it. Also, at the end of the day, I shouldn't have, like, I did not have the fucking juice. But who cares? I was moving to Canada, give me a win. So I had to take European history instead, not AP.
Mhm.
Humiliated. But I remember we learned a little bit about the
Ew.
Crusades, and it's Christian somebody this is back 'cause it's a history podcast, so, like, maybe we should actually be researching
But it's
these.
good to be, like, acknowledged it's a blind spot. We don't know the
Yes, I
Crusades.
a lot of wars and stuff like that, I don't know that much about. Old wars, but I
Yeah.
believe it is related to Christianity.
I know it was, like yeah, supposed to be, like, the Christian takeover. Like, I know that it was a big,
Look, I
like
can look this up. We have supercomputers at our fingertips.
I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to Google, so
The Crusades were a series of religious wars initiated, supported, and sometimes directed by the Christian Latin Church in the medieval
mm,
period. There you go. I
classic.
remember that one of them was the Children's Crusades, in which they sent a war of children to do it because that sticks with you, you know? Like you hear that and you go, "Well, that's insane.
That makes sense. That makes sense
We
to me,
shouldn't
I
be
think.
sending children in the army." Like, it feels like this is the thing, you know, sometimes when people do stuff and they're like being enacting evil, and
Yeah.
you're like, how do you do that and not be like, "Oh, I'm being evil," right? Like, "Oh, I'm the evil one. I'm being
Yeah.
evil."
Well, I guess they had to be the blueprint in a way, you know, like, they were like,
Yeah,
"What
breaking the
new
glass
evil?"
ceiling of
Right.
child soldiers. Yeah,
That's crazy. That's very Christianity for you, though.
honestly.
Seriously. freaking
Seriously.
ridiculous.
How was your
Seriously.
week? I haven't seen you in a
I
week.
know, I haven't seen you in ages.
5 days.
This
Still, ages,
it's
literally ages.
it's been years. I feel like I've gotten used to seeing you almost every day, and when I don't, I'm sorta like,
Well, this is the thing, like, it's like you and Reese, like, literally, because Reese is still in I was in Winnipeg this week, and Reese is still there, and he walked me to the airport, like, he took me to the airport when I was flying back home last night,
mm,
and something to note is we were spending time with his sister and his nephew who is turning 4 in, like, a week.
cute.
So I'm bone tired, like, I'm
Yeah,
exhausted from being
that'll
around a
kill ya.
child. Like, good God. So just that's I wanna add that context 'cause I was overtired, but when he said goodbye to me as I walked into security line, like, it was so sad.
Oh my god.
I just started to, like, weep in the security line, and
Oh.
he's coming home tomorrow night. Like, it's literally gonna be, like, 48 hours, and I was like, "I'm a simp." Like, this is so sad, but it's like, you 2 are the only ones that I'm like, "It's been so long.
It's
It's
been
been
ages.
5 days."
Well, because again, at this impasse I had last night where I was just like, "Oh, like, I wanna do
Should I see a
something,
movie? Yeah,
but
yeah.
I don't wanna have a big catch up with someone that I haven't seen in a while." And everyone that I hang out with regularly is, like, away right now,
Mhm.
and then it's like, what am I gonna do? Go on, like, a Hinge date?
Woof.
No, like, so I just was like, "I'm just gonna do work," and I watched, excellent Lindsay Ellis, Yoko and the
Oh, I love
Beatles
that.
video
I'm
essay, which
happy
I realized
yeah.
is that the one you watched when you said
Yes.
you okay? Because I was watching, I was like, "Carly's said some of these things."
Yeah, yeah, this is that I watched that one because we are gonna do a we're talking about the Beatles today, obviously, we're in our Beatles series right now,
Oh,
and we're
yes.
gonna do an episode about Yoko because we have to, and I think that video it's literally called, like, Yoko and the Beatles, it's on YouTube, it's
Mhm.
by Lindsay Ellis, has, like, so many smart insights. You just learn a lot from them,
Yeah.
obviously, but also, like, she's trying to explore why so many women get these redemption arcs that Yoko has never gotten,
Yeah.
and there's that part where she talks about how, like, victimhood obviously, first of all, there's the white womanhood of it all where Yoko is an Asian woman, but
Mhm.
also, like, victimhood was just, like, never a part of her narrative,
Yeah.
where, like, in a weird way, as our society, we're like, "But she hasn't suffered enough, so why would we give her a redemption arc?"
Yeah.
When it's like, "Well, she did, like, her husband was shot in front
Yeah.
of her."
She
And
suffered, she just didn't have, like, the privilege of making suffering a part of, like, you know what I mean? Like, because people
yeah,
wouldn't
or it's
have
like a
handled
choice
it.
as well, like, that's
Yeah,
the Courtney Love of it all, and again, like, there's obviously these women are complex, and you can argue, like, there are mistakes in their past, but I don't think
for
that
sure.
that makes them beyond redemption, and if you become hard and don't show your suffering to the world, whether that be conscious or unconscious, like, in a weird way, our culture is like, well, obviously, we're gonna give you a redemption arc for how we treated you, but after we know that you've suffered, because if we know you've suffered, then you've actually suffered enough for us to forgive you,
Yeah.
even though you didn't do anything wrong to begin with. But if you didn't suffer, then
Mhm.
why would we forgive you for the thing that we did wrong? Like, it's very weird. It's very much like if you just punch someone and they don't cry, you're like, "Well, I'm punching you. Who cares?"
Yeah.
And there's that quote of her in that interview like, there's an interview in that video where she's like, "I think the reason I'm healthy is because every time somebody sends me negative energy, I just turn it into positive energy." She's kind of insane. But,
Yeah,
like
but she's iconic.
yes, and in Get Back, I remember when I watched them, I was like, "Oh, she's actually like that girl." Like,
Yeah.
she is the cool girl. She was so ahead of her time. She's, like, really effortlessly cool, kind of really dresses in this very modern way, like, now. Like, she looks
Mhm.
kind of like a vlogger girl now, like, how everyone
Oh, yeah,
dresses.
her hats.
Yes, and, like, the little vests and stuff, like, she
Ugh.
looks sick.
Yeah.
And, like, yeah, obviously, it was, like, annoying. Like, her like, when she was doing the noise stuff on stage, I'm not arguing that's not annoying, but,
Yeah.
like, I don't know, nobody's coming at the Hare Krishnas, like, the 17 ones that George brought to rehearsal, you know? Like, it's very obviously racist and misogynist,
Yeah.
but we love Yoko. We'll do a whole I mean, obviously, she's you know, there's the John Lennon son of it all that we'll get to in the Yoko episode, but I love that video essay. I thought it was really well done. She doesn't
Yeah.
really come back to YouTube that much. She'll like her and Jenny Nicholson or whatever will post like one video a year, but I think even Lindsay Ellis left for like 4 years or something because
Oh,
she got
really?
canceled.
Oh, no.
But she made a video essay on being canceled that I thought was really good. It was bad. Like she got if you watch that video essay, like she is actually truly a victim of like just bad faith in her takes, if that makes
Mhm.
sense. Like she made some comment being like, "This Disney movie about dragons where Awkwafina was a dragon. Who cares? She said something about that and people were like, "Well, this is racist because it's about Asian people." And she's like, "I'm literally not saying that." Like,
Mhm.
it's very much like very few people I think are actually victims of cancel culture in a real way.
Yeah.
And I don't even think she's a victim because she just kind of, like, left and makes videos on, like, a Patreon or something, so sh you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But that's what happened there. I remember it was really cool because she, like, made a video about the whole thing, like, the process of it and, like, what it feels like to go through that kind of shaming or whatever. It's like what you want, like, any of these canceled male comedians who are, like, sex pests to actually do.
Yeah.
Like Louis CK becoming this alt-right bro comedian when I'm like, "You could have made a special about the experience." Like, you could have made
Yeah.
like, you are smart enough. You're doing
Mhm.
evil shit, like, full stop. But, like, you if anybody could, I do truly believe that he could have been the one to, like, have a reflection on that,
Yeah.
and he didn't.
I know.
Because it's easier just to be like, "Haha, never mind."
Yeah, I think it's also like I don't believe that cancel culture is the kind of like stain upon the nation that a lot of people seem
Mhm.
to take it as. But like, I do think that we are a little bit trigger happy when it comes to like grouping in people who have done really actually horrid things with people who just maybe have misspoke or misstepped. Um,
Definitely.
and
Especially if you
yeah,
say, like, "Hey, that is wrong," and they're like, "Work. True. My
hmm
bad." You know,
yeah,
like, there's a lot more room for redemption in saying the wrong thing as opposed to, like, destroying somebody's life by jerking off in front of them and then being like, "Don't tell anyone."
yes, yeah, exactly. Like, I think there's levels to it, but I don't wanna say, like, particular people that I'm thinking of, but, like, I feel like most of them are, like, already, like, inherently marginalized people. Or
Yes, of
either, like, women
course.
or people of color, and it's just like, oh, it's really interesting that, like, we were so quick to
Deplatform them.
deplatform them.
Yes. Oh, definitely. Well, it also comes from the whole, like, I'm gonna hit a target that I can actually hit, where it's like
Yeah.
we're aware that these strong, powerful white men will never really be deplatformed.
No. No, even, like,
So
the
you
Louis CK of it all, we've got this horrible backlash thing that happens now where it's like, when someone like that does get canceled, they now kinda automatically become, like, a speaking post of,
yeah.
like, this, like, ultra right-wing conservative thing that's going on. It's very, very weird.
Well, it's also like just be better at your job.
Yeah,
Like I hate the
exactly.
whole argument of being like wokeism is killing comedy where it's like your job is to make the audience laugh, and if you're not
Mhm.
making the audience laugh, then adjust. Like, I don't know what to fucking tell you.
Well
It's so strange, like, the
yeah.
audience is too woke now. It's like, well, the audience is your boss, so do what the fucking audience wants. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand this dissonance of being like, I know better than the audience. Like,
Uh-huh.
your job is to make people laugh. Your job isn't to make people laugh at all the things that you think are the best.
Yeah.
Your job is to figure out what people think is funny. So if they're saying, "Hey, we don't like it when you say 7 slurs in a row or tell a rape joke,"
You
then
can't just be
don't
like,
do
"Well, you're
that.
wrong.
Yeah,
You're
it's
wrong,
so
I like
fucking
it."
crazy. And you can tell that those are people that got into comedy because they need to be thought of as funny, not because they
Mhm.
like to make people laugh.
Yeah.
Um, because 'cause they're not like they don't care.
Yeah. I think you see this on a lot of different levels in comedy too, where it's just like some people who I find like are kind of in the early stages of their career and get really frustrated. People don't find them funnier or like don't see them as
Mhm.
like some sort of like prodigy. Like the prodigy thing in comedy is really weird.
Disease.
Um it's a disease. But and then you see it on more serious levels where people are like doing wildly offensive stuff and they can't break out of the mindset that like maybe there is comedy beyond just making fun of people and punching down on people and stuff like that. And like, I am of the belief that you can say almost anything in comedy if
Mhm.
you're a good comedian. So if you're saying something and it's not being received well, chances are you are just a bad comedian.
It's just not an interesting take. Like, that's the thing.
No.
There's a lot of jokes you can make about these quote unquote like things you cannot joke about anymore. There are a lot of jokes you can make about
Yeah.
them. It's just that like your take isn't good. It's
Mhm.
not funny. Like if you
Yeah.
tell a joke at an open mic and it's not even about those kinds of things and it doesn't work, you don't go, "Well, I guess nobody wants to hear my jokes about bagels anymore. You can't even fucking joke about bagels anymore." You just go, "Oh, it didn't work." You don't go
Yeah.
like, "Well, you can't talk about that anymore." It just, like, annoys me when I'm like, "Just be better at your job." The amount of
Mhm.
times I've been in stand-up shows and I'm not laughing because I am a hard laugh if you're bad at comedy.
Yeah.
And
Easy
people are
laugh
like,
if you're
"Why aren't you
fucking good.
laughing?" People are always like, "Why aren't you laughing?" And I'm like, "You're not doing your job
Yeah,
well."
you're
Like, I
not
don't know what to
doing
tell
anything
you.
funny.
Like, it's very strange to me.
I
Where it's
know
like, when I'm on stage and when people aren't laughing, at no point does it cross my mind to be like, "These people are the problem."
I went
I'm like, "Oh, I'm flopping. I'm
I
being bad
I
right
went to
now."
go see Tourico at Second City in Toronto,
Yeah.
last Friday, and I honestly really liked it. I had a great time. Gazelle's in it, some of our other friends are in it, which is
It's a
great.
good cast.
It's
I
it
really do like that
it's a good
cast.
cast. There was one sketch in particular I really hated,
Was
and
it the Bring in the Clowns one?
yep. It was this one. I'm sorry, Second City, for listening to this, but, it's this one
It is the
where
craziest shit I've seen
they
on
play
stage.
they play "Send in the Clowns" from, Little Night Music, which is a beautiful song. So, A, they misuse the song, which already sits badly with me,
Yeah,
and then all the
which
cast
Blair
come
will not
out.
stand
I
for.
will not stand for a disrespect of Stephen Sondheim,
No.
and then they all the cast come out wearing these giant, like,
Huge masks.
plasterboard masks of different, like, politicians, like
It's like
creepy male
Trump.
politicians.
Well, it's also like Elon Musk.
Yeah.
There's
Justin
fucking
Trudeau,
Kevin what's his name
Kevin
from Shark Tank.
O'Leary from
Kevin
Dragon's
O'Leary.
Den, like, it's Shark Tank if you're American.
Also,
Um,
like, the order in which like, he comes out, like, last, and I'm like, "That is not the order of
it just doesn't
craziness."
make any sense, and I am not a Justin Trudeau offender, but I think it is, like, downright dangerous to lump in Justin Trudeau with people like Elon Musk and Donald
Oh,
Trump.
of course. I'm like, there's a difference between again, not a fan.
Yeah,
Not a
not a
fan.
fan, but I'm a fan because
I
he
famously talked about when the Liberal candidate came to my door. Did we talk about that on the podcast? I
maybe?
don't know. Well,
We
there was
talk about
an
so much on
election in
here.
my riding, and the Liberal candidate came to my door, and it was basically like Liberal versus conservative. Like they thought that the conservatives would dethrone,
Awesome.
and you know what? At the end of the day, the conservatives did, and now I live in a conservative riding in downtown Toronto.
Yes! Oh,
Woo!
that's so unique.
It's very chic. Hate it. Literally wish
Mhm,
I was dead.
mhm.
And I voted for like NDP literally every election
Yeah.
since I've been able to vote. But I did vote Liberal this time because it was like strategic. But like
Mhm.
the Liberal candidate came to my door and was like, "Oh, like canvassing," and I was like, "I'm gonna vote for you so you can like leave because I don't want to talk to you. Like I don't like what your party stands for, but like I just hate you less.
Yeah.
Like I just hate you less than this
Like, I don't wanna
fucker."
hear your views, but yes, you're getting my vote because
Well,
it's
also, like,
between you and a
I
rat.
hate when people think I'm fucking stupid, like, it
Yeah.
really grinds my gears where she's like, "Free birth control and diabetes medication." I'm like, "It's so interesting that every single liberal viewpoint is
Yeah.
just grafted from the NDP 5 years prior." Like, it's
I know.
actually really funny. Like,
Yeah.
it's so but I'm like, "I'm not gonna argue with this person."
Yeah. So, like, a
But she's like,
hot take
"Before
from
I."
2013 is what you
This is
want?
what I'm
Like,
saying. It's like,
oh my
"Oh, and then you're
god.
packaging it as being liberal." Like, it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
But then, she's like, "Before I go, can I just ask you, what's kept you voting liberal all these years?" And me and Reese, because Reese also came, she was like, "I have to see this." And we were like, "Oh, um, this is I've never voted liberal before. I just don't wanna vote conservative. I don't want the," and she was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, bye." And I was like,
Okay,
"That's a
cool.
crazy fucking question." Like,
Yeah.
and then now we joke all the time where we'll just be like, "By the way, what's kept you voting liberal all these
It's kept
years?"
you voting liberal all
And
these
being like, "Oh,
years.
it's broken promises. Like, I just love how you break your
I
promises." But all that's to
love
say
it.
is, like, broken promises are a lot different than, like, actively stopping democracy from
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Also, like, Kevin O'Leary killed a man with his boat.
Did you really?
Well, yeah, his wife did, but it's like, and if
But
you're
it was
not
Kevin.
watching on if you're
Yeah.
not watching visually, I'm doing quotes because the whole thing was like, his wife killed someone with they had a
Yeah.
boat accident, but everyone's like, "He for sure was
Yeah.
driving the boat,
No, for
and she
sure.
took the
A
fall for
woman
him."
driving a boat?
Get
I don't
real.
think so.
Wake up,
Wake up,
America.
sheeple. Women on
Exactly.
boats. Yeah, we
Um,
saw how that went on
and,
the
like, yes, did
Titanic.
Justin Trudeau and yes, did Justin Trudeau do blackface? Absolute.
Yeah.
He nobody loves a costume more than our prime
Well, it was
minister.
brown face, let's be
Brown face. Yes, that's true.
which is
Several
almost
times.
it's, you can't quantify it, but it's almost like, what? That's not even like there's not even a set precedent for that.
No, for your prime minister doing brown face
Yeah.
6 times, and not even in a way of, like, in a way of, like, he doesn't think he's being racist, he thinks he's doing a cool Halloween
No,
costume,
he's
which is
being
even
Aladdin.
wilder. Because you would think it'd be like, "Oh, he's in some kind of boys' club at university and they're doing some kind of hazing." No. He's
No.
doing a weird little, like, twinkle toes song and dance while he's a drama teacher just in full brown
Yeah,
face
he's
as
doing
Aladdin.
magic carpet ride, like,
It's
which is
crazy. It's, like,
Yeah.
also gotta be one of the lamest ways to be racist. Like,
No,
it's
this is the
insane.
thing. So, like, I do not like Justin Trudeau, but, like, I do think it is
I
dangerous to
agree.
lump him in with people who are, like, destroying the world. And apparently when they
Did they
first did
have
this
Polyev?
sketch, yeah, they had Polyev, but I didn't even
Okay, that's
recognize
good.
him.
Polyev,
I
if you're not and if you're not deep in to Canadian politics, Justin Trudeau's our current prime minister, he's in the Liberal Party, he's not winning. There's literally no fucking way he's winning again.
no,
Um,
Pierre Polyev is the next prime
yes,
minister.
and he's conservative, and
Yeah.
he's kind of he's like our I mean, it's hard to compare anything to the States because everything is just not as nuts, but he's
Yeah.
not cool and awesome.
No, no, he sucks. But the nice thing is whenever there's a conservative prime minister, Ontario will get a liberal progressive premier, which rocks.
That's nice.
But unfortunately we don't live in a perfect world. We can't have both. We always need one tyrant in charge. That's the Canadian politics way. But the
Yes.
point is that this sketch was just kind of like it was kind of nothing. They just kind of danced around and I was like,
And then it ends.
and apparently what they did,
Okay.
this was a sketch from Chicago that they did in 2016, and
Which is when that's a fresh idea,
and it
let's
was
say
it was
that
a
first
fresh
of all.
idea, and they did it all with Trump masks, and so this was the time before we realized that, like, Trump was capable of killing people and, like, destroying a country, et
Yeah,
cetera, et
they're just like,
cetera.
"Ha ha ha, he's a clown.
Yeah,
He's
doing
not
it
gonna,
in
like, destroy the world."
yeah,
Yes.
doing it in 2024 is just sort of like, "This is a weird choice,"
Yeah, these
and
people are horrific.
all through the show, like, I'm not a hard laugh, I like laughing, but, like, I only laugh at things that I think are funny, and honestly, I was enjoying myself, like, especially, like, having friends in the show, like, it
And they're
was like a
talented
night
people.
out.
It's really fun to see your friends do, like, a big show.
Yeah. I was there with a couple of girls, we were, like, splitting pitchers, I
Fun.
love beer,
You
so
do.
I'm in a great mood, and during this thing, because they're all wearing masks, I think I kinda lose the idea that they can see me in the audience, and so I'm just sorta sitting there, like, just dead eye looking like I know I look pissed. I'm, like, leaning on the table also because 'cause I'm drunk. The show's
Yeah.
already an hour and a half in, so I'm, like, getting kinda tired, I'm drunk, I'm, like, leaning on the table, like,
Which is
just,
also,
like,
let's say it,
scowling.
an objectively insane placement of that sketch as well. Like,
Yeah.
not to get into it in a way that I don't think the podcast listeners care about the direction of sketch shows, but that is a crazy fucking place to put that.
No, it
When
is.
everyone's tired,
Yeah.
that's gotta be an act opener.
And
I'm
then
sorry.
after the show, I was talking to Gavin Pounds, who was in the show, and he was like, "What'd you think of the show?" And I was like, "Honestly, I really liked it. There was one sketch I didn't like," and he was like, "Yeah, we all saw you looking pissed." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't really."
You guys can see the masks don't work both ways.
Yeah, he was just like, "Yeah, we saw it on your face. You looked more miserable than I've ever seen someone looking." I was like,
But it's
"Oh,
also like
I'm sorry."
'cause Reese understudies that show,
Yeah,
so I've seen it, I know about it, and there are some things again, like, there's people that are really funny, I think there's some really fun sketches. I love that bat sketch, I think that bat
that's
sketch is
fun.
super fun. Shall we talk about the Beatles?
Yeah, also
All I
'cause
wanted to tell you was I went to Winnipeg, and I love Winnipeg. I will no longer tolerate Winnipeg slander. It's the best city in the world.
oh my god, okay, do you wanna do a quick recap? Because 'Cause I've actually always I really do wanna go to Winnipeg.
You would love it.
I
I
think I
really think
would.
amazing food, great just, like, vibes, and everybody's, like, actually there to see stuff. Like, I didn't go see a show, but I was talking to people because there's, like, a music scene there, and,
Mhm.
like, when you go see music there, like, people apparently, like, really watch shows
Yeah.
because 'cause they're, like, there to see music as opposed to, like, hear everyone talks and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Um, but it was just amazing. I went to Tallgrass Prairie Bakery, like, 7 times, but it's
gorgeous.
so fucking good, so fucking good. We went to the Forks, which is just, like, this, like, old warehouse at the where 2 rivers meet, but it was gorgeous. Like, I
An
loved
old
it.
warehouse where 2 rivers meet, that's so poetic.
I know, it's really beautiful. We went to McNally Robinson, which is like a bookstore, which was amazing. It was
Oh,
like
my
being in a bookstore.
friend who's from Winnipeg is always talking about McNally Robinson.
It's like
She's
being in
like,
a bookstore when you're a child. Like, it's like the
"Oh,
last like, the children's section is upstairs, and it's like this
beautiful,
winding staircase that makes it look like a, um, tree house and stuff. It's sick.
beautiful."
Um, and, like, a lot of it was just being with, Reese's family and stuff, which was really nice. It's also just, like,
Mhm.
nice to know people there. But I just was like, "You know what? I get it." I don't think I would move there because I don't really think I would move away from my family, and I can't
Yeah.
drive. But I'm like,
Yes.
"I get it. It's
Mhm.
gorgeous. It's cheap.
Yeah.
Amazing." Like, I had every meal I had there was a banger.
I
and
really
it was just
want to
beautiful.
apply for the Winnipeg Fringe Festival because apparently
Yes.
it's a blast.
This is what I've heard. I've heard that if you go to the Winnipeg Fringe Festival, again, people actually go.
Yeah. This is, my friend JD who's from Winnipeg.
Yes, of course, because
We
JD went to camp with Reese.
JD went to camp with Reese.
Camp with Sega.
Camp Saigo with Reese, they went together, they both lived in Winnipeg. Well, Reese lived in Brandon, Manitoba with the polar
Yes.
bears, but,
Let's be real.
JD lived in Winnipeg and knew Reese in Winnipeg. So, JD will, talk about the Winnipeg Fringe, and the way she describes it is, like, because there's not a ton happening in Winnipeg always,
Yes.
everyone is like, "We're going to the Fringe, this is a thing that's happening." And
Yes.
I'm just like, "Oh, that's so fun."
People just go see shows, it's really
Mhm.
nice, and there's not a lot like, there's one big comedy team there, but there's not, like, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I also love the Weaker Thans, they're one of my favorite band of all time, so, like, I
Okay.
have romanticized Winnipeg. Do you know the Weaker Thans?
I know them from Reese, but I don't
Ah,
really
they're
know them
so
that
good.
well.
They've got this saga of songs about Virtute the cat or Virtue the cat, I don't really know which one it is. Do you know these songs?
No,
They're
I don't.
the bloody saddest songs ever. If I ever just wanna weep, there's a
You listen
playlist
to the saga of these
of
songs about
this,
a
and
cat,
it's
yeah.
about this, like, cat and his owner, and the owner is, like, going through, like, depression and, like, alcoholism and stuff, and it's from the cat's perspective, and the cat is
Whew,
like, "Why don't you ever wanna play? Like, why don't we
whew,
just keep doing this?" Like, oh my god, Carly, it actually,
that's
like,
tough.
I'm tearing up right now talking about it.
That's tough.
And then there's the other one that's called, like, Virtute the Cat, like, Departure, the Virtute the Cat's
Oh, you're
departure.
crying,
I
okay.
literally am crying, no, I can't think about the core cry, which is, like, the cat leaving, being like, "I, you
What?
can't take care of me, so I'm leaving." It's literally the saddest thing in the world. Oh my, but they're
That's really, really
such a good
sad.
bag. I think their lyricism is some
Yeah,
of my
that sounds
favorite
crazy.
of all time. Like, their lyrics are just
Yes.
beautiful. I could go on and on about the
I mean,
Weaker
and
Thans.
there's Miriam Toews, the writer who's from
Yes!
Winnipeg.
A Complicated Kindness, which I keep starting and not finishing.
I haven't read her, but I've heard she's amazing. Reese really likes her.
Yes.
Um, and it was also like a little bit of fall weather. I just liked it. It was very gorgeous. We also went to the botanical gardens. Fun. But
Beautiful.
it was just like I was like, "You know what? Like this city gets a lot of hate." Granted, we went in August. I'm sure if I went in January, I would literally kill
You
myself.
feel
It's so cold.
differently. Yeah.
But I'm like, this city gets a lot of hate, and it's actually I think it's an awesome city.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. I do
Will
wanna
not
go.
tolerate Winnipeg slander on this channel.
When I was a kid, my dad told me that he would take me to the Winnipeg Junos and then never did, and, I've just kind of been holding that kind of against him. Surely he doesn't remember even making this promise to me when I was, like, 6.
But you remember.
But I was like, "It's interesting how you told me I was gonna go to the Winnipeg Junos, and I only ever got to go to the Toronto Junos where I gave the finger to Rob Ford."
Awesome.
That's my Canadiana story for the
That's really
podcast.
beautiful. I
Yeah.
think it's important that we make content that is distinctly Canadian, and by that meaning forcing everybody to listen and about to
Yes.
random Canadian facts. And sometimes I get it. If you think it's boring, it's fine. But every once in a while, we'll get a comment from an American being like, "I don't care," and I'll be like, "Well, bitch, I got to listen to shit about your country every day of my fucking life."
I
So
was
you could
listening.
listen to one comment about Winnipeg,
This
like
is the
to be like,
thing.
"I don't care about this," being like, "Yeah, because sorry, Americans," and I say this as somebody who lived in America. You guys don't really care about what happens in literally anywhere else in the world.
This is a very Canadiana intro, though. I love it. I do love talking about Canada, but I do think that it's good to know about other countries, and here we're teaching you about other countries. And I was listening to a podcast episode the other day, one of my favorite podcasts, which quite pop, Bingetopia, if you like
Oh,
it,
yes.
they're
I mean,
very
I haven't
good.
listened, but I do know it.
They're really good. I liked it a lot. Kind of similar concept to this, but they do more like social kind of like
Cool.
insights. And they were talking about sweet green. And you know what? We don't have sweet green here. So I didn't even know what the fuck they were talking about. And I listened to the whole episode and I got
'Cause
the
you gotta
info.
learn.
I learned and I was like, whenever Sweet Green decides to franchise here and then immediately fail like
Clo
Target did, I'm gonna
and
know so
Nordstrom.
much
Yeah.
about and Nordstrom.
Yeah, I only know about it from influencers, like going to Sweet Green to get a
I'm like,
salad.
"It's salads? I don't really understand." They were talking all this stuff at Sweetgreen, and I was like,
I
what
think
is
it's,
it?"
like, freshy, but not, like, disturbing. Like, when you go into a Freshie here, it's, like
Scary.
it's really scary, and it's, like, a
Yeah.
delicious salad, but, like, it's bathed in fluorescent light, and there's, like, a dead fly in the corner. I
Mhm.
think this is, like, nice.
Yeah. Canada, I realize this every time I go to the States, Canada's not into fast food,
No,
and I always
no,
think we are, and we're
we're
not.
not.
We're
I
not.
do yeah, like, it is really interesting even being in, like, Winnipeg, which is definitely more, like, car-centric.
Mhm.
And I noticed because again, addicted to the airport lounge. We've talked about this, right? So I was in the airport lounge in Winnipeg, and, the food there was just, like I couldn't eat as much. Like, usually they'll have, like, a dal or something, like, some
Yeah.
lentil, like, curry dish and, like, stuff like that, but they had, like, pork and gravy, which is insane to eat at the airport buffet. I'm sorry, that is nuts. But I was like, "Oh, I bet it's, like, regional, like, I bet this
Mhm.
fucking works here."
Mhm.
Um, but even so, like, there's just not a lot of fast food.
Yeah.
It's
No.
kinda weird. Like, we do have it. We still have
Yeah,
it,
for
but it's not
sure.
like there in America, there's, like, little sections where, like, it's basically like a strip mall, but it's all fast food, and you can go to the different places.
Mhm.
'Cause I grew I feel like I have the ability to kind of slander America because I lived it, you know?
Yeah.
But,
I
like,
think
we have a lot of nice fast food as well,
yeah, we kind of have that in Canada, I feel like, but, like, it's just
like
not to
Burger
the
Priest and
same.
stuff.
Yeah, I just feel like a lot of times when, like, a new fast food restaurant opens, like, no one's interested. Like, they opened a Shake Shack in Yonge and Dundas Square, and there's, like, a crazy line all the time, but, like, no one I know who lives in Toronto has eaten at it. It's all just tourists.
Yeah, this is I think the only one that's really stuck, is Chick-fil-A
Chick-fil-A
here.
is stuck.
And here's what I will say. I won't eat on it here because it's a different context, because it's homophobic. I get that. And also, I don't eat meat, so, like, there's not a
Yeah.
lot for me there anymore.
Mhm.
But in the States, when it already existed before we knew it was homophobic, it's
You're getting
fine.
down there. You're getting Chick-fil-A
Guys,
sauce.
it's really good. Like, it is really, really good. It's so good, but I get it. But that one has stuck, and I think it's because it's also very different than anything that exists.
Yeah.
Like, you can't just introduce a new burger place, like, who fucking cares?
Mhm.
But we don't have a place where you just get kinda breaded nuggets,
Yeah,
you know?
Toronto's big into chicken too. Like,
Yes,
we're
Popeyes. Well, I think the
chicken
world in
crazy here.
general is really into chicken
You
right
know what?
now.
I will say I did this thing where I made a whole roast chicken this week,
Whoa, okay,
and
you're like trad wife?
I really trad wifed, and honestly, it I
In the oven?
in the oven, in a
Wow.
roast pan with, like, a ton of vegetables and stuff. It was
This is
so
really
good.
impressive, Blair.
I used
This leads
fresh
to my
herbs.
thing of that I think we should do a friends giving this year.
I know I want to.
Because I always wanna make a bunch of pumpkin pies, and I can't because where am I to
Where are
bring
you
them?
gonna bring the pies? I would love to do a Friendsgiving. I would
Okay, I'll plan
totally
it. I'll organize it.
slay. I have an extender for my kitchen table, so
Okay, that's good to know
not to
because I
brag.
where truly where
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
am
would
I
love
gonna
to do a
hold it here?
Friendsgiving.
Okay.
But yeah, it was huge, and honestly, I was kinda like,
That's
I'm not a big
amazing.
chicken eater, but, like, this bangs, and it's,
I
like,
think it's a
so much
classic for
food.
a reason. Yeah, it's so
Exactly.
much food, you can do so much with it, you can make little sandwiches.
I'm trying to eat less meat. I don't know if I'm gonna
Mhm.
go back to being vegetarian, but I'm trying to just do this thing where I'm like, if I'm eating meat, I'm doing it in a more, like, conscious way, and to me, I'm like,
Yeah. If
making,
you're
like, a
cooking
whole
meat, like, if you're
chicken and
yeah,
cooking
that's
it,
conscious. Yes,
that's
I
it feels,
agree.
like, conscious, and I'm just like, I'm also, like, feeding myself, and, like, this is, like, I can make sure, like, you have more buying control over being, like, where you get the chicken from or whatever.
This is the thing that I mean, again, I don't eat meat, but,
Yeah.
also that's partially because of a stomach thing, like, my stomach just works better if I don't have meat,
Yeah,
um,
that's
and
true
no
for
judgment on
unfortunately
anyone
most
else.
people.
I know, and as we my body is falling apart,
Mhm.
but I find that, like, especially in the last couple episodes when I was, like, feeling so, like, untethered and horrible, a real way to, like, kinda bring yourself back is to, like, trying to think of the word, but, like, connect with your personhood and, like, I made bread last week,
Ugh,
cooking all your meals and stuff like
yeah.
that, like, engaging and, like, keeping yourself alive with those tasks, I think is really powerful. And, I
Mhm.
mean, obviously, not everyone has that opportunity because they work, like, 17 hours a day,
Mhm.
but if you're kind of flirting with joblessness as we are, you have hours of the day to dedicate to doing those things, even though you're working, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not, like, at your office for 7 hours a
Yeah,
day.
exactly.
You can make a roast chicken, you can bake bread, and it's great.
Yeah. I know, I do think that, like, there's something to be said about connecting with the stuff you're doing, like, trying to do things more consciously.
It
I'm
sucks, but it's
yeah,
true.
I've gotten kinda re-addicted to my phone, which is shitty, so I'm trying to just, like, do
Me too.
things that don't, include my phone because I was
I've been reading a
really
lot of,
good
like
about it.
You were. I feel like we all go through phases like that
I
too. I
think it's
think I was
honestly
getting
I'm checking the Kamala Harris updates too much. That's literally what it is, and, like, it
that's
sounds like
tough.
I'm joking, but that
No,
is
I know, it's
what's
that's just Blair
happening.
is, like, the most coconut pilled person I know, and I like Kamala, like, I love her, like
I wanna make it clear, like, I inherently distrust politicians. I do
yes, me too,
care for,
yes,
like, the Democratic Party. I think that, like, Kamala obviously, should be doing more for, the Palestinians. Like, I think that
yes.
she's, misstepping in a lot of places. However, I'm all for a political campaign for a candidate that you can protest and you can pressure to make
Well,
changes.
yes, and if she is elected, you can elect a politician that you can actually hold their feet to the fire,
This is
right?
the
Like,
thing. With Trump, you can't.
no,
And
it's
Kamala's
just
just so fun, like, Tim Walz, like, Kamala's being fun, like, everyone's just having fun, and it's nice to see, and so in December, I'll go back to being, freaking nihilist about the whole
of
thing.
course. But yeah, I do think being less on your phone is good.
Get off your phone, turn off the
Get off
podcast,
your phone. Get
get
off your
off your
phone. I'm
phone.
almost done, The West Wing, and the last season is like an election, and it's very much giving, like, the first Latino president, maybe? If
Ooh.
you think he's Obama, you drew those correlations on your own. Like, they don't say anything, but they're like, "But if you think he's like Obama,
Yeah, if you
hey, that's
think
just you."
he's that's
And I was
kind of
like, there
your
used to be a
prerogative.
time, literally, when politics felt so optimistic.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
there used to be a time when, like, because I was talking to, Reese's sister, and she went to the Museum of African American History in Detroit,
Oh, I
and
wanna go.
it ends when Obama's elected. Like, it basically should just have a sign that's like, "We won, mama!
And we're done.
No more racism. Obama's in office.
Thank you, Barack.
Thank you."
Thank you,
Like,
Barack Obama.
but it felt so good when that was the truth. When that was the time. Oh my god.
I think about one of my favorite shows of all time is Parks and Rec, and I'm just like, "Ah, it would not work anymore."
No.
I don't think
No, you gotta have Veep where they're evil.
Yeah, exactly. So, I do love Parks and Rec, though.
Me too.
Anyway, let's get into the freaking Beatles.
'Cause we're covering quite a lot. We're covering the Beatles from 1965 to 1970.
N We're covering
So
quite a lot. We're covering quite a lot. Okay, so we stopped off Beatlemania is in full fledged. They're making so we're dipping back to 1963 for a second. They're making Beatles for Sale. They're kinda burnt out. When they take off from touring, they were, expected to write a new record. They were supposed to tape shows. They were supposed to do press tours, et cetera, et cetera. They're just kind of like, "Oh my god, so much is happening." But in this, they put out an album, Beatles for Sale, um, and they come up with 8 of the 14 songs on the album, which is kind of like the last time
yeah,
that
that's
they
kinda
do
crazy to
material
think
that
about.
isn't written by them,
Like, to
right?
think about them not performing their own songs. Whenever that's an artist. Yeah.
Exactly, because but that was, like, common. It was not common at the time to write all your material. It was often common to do standards. We see this with the early Stone stuff. Like, you see this up until basically now. Like, this is kind of not like a
Yeah, I mean,
revolution, but close to
Here You
it.
Come Again is, like,
Um,
one of the only Dolly Parton songs that she didn't write, but she was like, "Well, I know a hit when I hear a hit," and, like,
yeah.
"Well, I'm not gonna do that? Are you kidding me?"
Yeah, exactly.
Love that song.
So they put out 8 days a week. They also released the movie A Hard Day's Night and the soundtrack. The soundtrack is almost entirely written by Lennon, so it's like his big achievement, Hard Day's Night, and it's huge. So most
Cool.
of 1964 is them touring, right? Then we get to 1965. A pivotal moment in 1965 is that, and this is how the story goes, it's debated how true this is. It's debated if this is them kind of trying to cover up some illicit activities. But the story goes that John Lennon and George Harrison were
Yes.
introduced to LSD when their dentist snuck it into
Yes,
their
I've
like
heard this, and
drinks
I'm
at
like,
dinner.
and here's the thing. First of all, why the fuck are you at dinner with your dentist? That's insane. That is crazy. And also, why the
Community.
fuck is your dentist
Well,
putting
you know how like
LSD
dentists
drugging
in
you?
but like you know how like
Yeah,
dentist is kind of code for like drug dealer in
your
Hollywood?
dentist,
I feel
wink.
like that's a thing. Like, it's like, "Oh, my dentist is
Yeah,
coming, my
because also,
dentist
like,
is
if your
coming."
drug dealer drugs you, you're like, "Well, what, I'm gonna tell a bird not to sing?" But, like, if your
Uh,
dentist drugs you, you're like,
yeah,
"What the fuck?"
exactly. So yeah, like, "What?" So they're introduced to LSD during this. Harrison becomes a pretty regular user of LSD, um, and it starts
Mhm.
his path to, like, spiritualism and Hinduism and all this stuff, and he becomes a regular user of the drug. Lennon is also into it, and then Ringo Starr starts doing some
But nobody
LSD.
seemingly
He's,
was
like,
as
into
into it
it.
as George.
They're
Mhm.
George got really into it in a
In, like,
really
a drug way.
spiritual way. John Lennon was into it, in, like, a drug way. Like, this is kind of a becomes a point of contention between Harrison and Lennon because Harrison sees the way he's doing LSD as really spiritual, really eye-opening, really kind of, like, expanding his mind, and he sees John Lennon doing it sorta like the kid who smokes pot in your high school and thinks that they're
Yeah,
like,
that
"Oh my
makes
god,
sense,
I'm
and
so
there's nothing more
crazy for
annoying than
doing
somebody
this."
kind of comparing them to you, and you're like, "Well, no." Well, what we're doing is like, "Yeah, well, me and George, we both
Yeah,
really love LSD," and
exactly.
we'd be like, "Well, like, I like it in a different way than you." And I will
Yeah,
like,
like,
I
I'm
have friends
actually
that
doing it right,
both
and
of
you're
us are
kinda
friends with,
doing
like,
it
a lot of
wrong.
dirtbags who I would argue are addicted to drugs. Um, and some of them
Yeah,
are the George Harrison path where they're
easy.
like, "No, it's medicine. Like, I'm addicted to these drugs, but they make my brain good." And I'm like,
Mhm.
I don't know."
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're still doing recreational drugs, like,
You drugs are
I
fun,
like,
that's
it's
the
fine to just
whole
admit that you like
basis.
drugs. That's the
Yes.
whole basis of people doing drugs. So, Paul McCartney is, like, reluctant, then eventually he gives it a go. He's eventually the first person who admits to doing LSD publicly. Also around this time, John Lennon is married with his first child. George Harrison, he moves in with his girlfriend Patty Boyd, and Ringo gets married to Maureen Cox, and Paul McCartney goes to London, and he
Right.
gets really involved in, like, the counterculture scene. He's sorta like, "All my bandmates are kind of wifed up, they're kind of boring, they're getting
So
kinda more
interesting
into,
to
like,
think of them that
drugs and
way,
stuff like this."
because like, Paul
I'm
becomes the original wife guy, like, in the
Yeah.
end.
But this is kind of what it is, right? Like, I feel like I even see this with my friends now where it's like people that were always coupled up are now in these kind of like unserious relationships. And then the people who get in relationships when they're 30, they're like,
Yeah, like, the whole thing of,
oh,
like,
this is
waiting
healthy. I
until
like
you have the
this.
capacity, like, respectfully, nobody in the Beatles has the capacity to be in a good relationship.
No, for sure. Like their lives are insane. So Paul McCartney goes to London. He starts getting involved.
So is this, like,
Um,
mod and punk and stuff like that? Like,
this is
what
kind of
is
more
the
like
counterculture at the time?
it's like beatnik poetry.
That's
Like,
fun. Oh, that's fun.
he's getting into like the art movements and stuff like that.
Turtlenecks.
Turtlenecks. Yeah, it's giving turtleneck, it's giving, like, little pair of glasses, it's giving,
Mhm.
like, tweed.
Cigarette pant.
Yeah, it's giving, oh, what's that
Oh,
guy's name?
bring it back.
Bring It Back, honestly, that probably is my favorite style of all time.
Yeah, I've decided
Um,
recently that I think I'm going to start dressing just like Fran Lebowitz. Um,
yes.
I think she's awesome. I mean, I'm sure if I say that, somebody's gonna be like, "Here's the worst take she's ever had," in the comments, and I'm gonna be like, "Okay, I take it back." But
Yeah.
there is something about, like, something in the '60s or '70s and just being, like, uniform.
Yeah. I know, I feel this too, I feel like every year I get a little bit closer to dressing just kind of like a full kind of beatnik poet,
How
and
you
I'm
will
like
dress for the rest of your life. Like, when you look back, you'll
exactly.
be like, "Oh, this is when Blair
Yeah.
solidified the Blair outfit."
Yeah, I think that will be this fall for me, to be honest.
Oh, the looks we're gonna turn this fall.
I'm excited, especially because like, watching the podcast now, I'm just like, none of my good clothes are summer clothes. Like, I just look kind of like a slob
You do really
all
see
the
in
time.
when we started the Salem episodes, you're like, "Okay, we're kind of killing it. Like, why are we
Yeah,
actually
we're kind of
showing
eating
up
a
in
little bit.
fits?"
Well, because I do feel like now that we make video content for the podcast, I mean, we've always done that. I don't know why it's like a new concept I've just introduced there.
Yeah.
But, we like, I do think I watch podcasts and I'm just sort of like, "Oh, they're turning a look," and I'm like, I don't
Yeah.
feel like for the last 3 months, I do not feel like I've been turning looks. I've been turning up, upset and
In
sweaty.
crisis. So,
So,
he was like, in the counterculture, like, beatnik
he was in the
poets.
counterculture. He's getting to
This is
know
in London?
poets. Yeah.
Okay.
He's getting to know poets, he's getting to know the rebels, he's getting to know the scene, right? And
Oh.
so, like, Paul
Oh.
McCartney is, like, the first one who's kinda like, "Yeah, like, I wanna be making art."
Yeah. When did they meet Dylan? Is this around that time?
That would have been before, but,
Okay,
like, pretty close to this. So it's, like,
'cause
all around the time, like, the Beatles have this desperation to be taken seriously. Like, they're
of
very
course,
popular in the mainstream.
the grass is
They
always
want
greener.
exactly. They wanna be known as artists. They wanna be known as, like, visionaries kinda thing, right?
Well, yeah, did this is that was another part that I thought was really interesting in that Lindsay Ellis Yoko essay, talking about how, like, yeah, Yoko obviously used John Lennon for fame, but, like, he
Yeah.
used her for, like, any sense of cultural, like, validity.
Yes. And you can see this especially with John Lennon, where it's just like he really wanted to be known as someone who was like a voice of a generation, and they
He
almost
got
got
there.
stuck in this kind of like and he did, he was successful. But I do think that like the Beatles themselves got stuck in this kind of like area where they were just so popular, making so much for the mainstream
Of
that
course.
like it's hard for those
You've
2
gotta
things
make,
to
like,
coexist.
3-minute kind of interstitials on the White Album that are basically unlistenable. Like, you
And
have to
no,
do
I
that.
love
No,
Revolution
this is the
9. What
thing.
are you
I no,
talking?
I love it, but I'm like, that it makes sense. It's the same thing like Maggie Rogers did this after her first album. She didn't, like, release anything for basically, like, 3 years, except
Yeah.
for, like, random B-sides, like, with, like,
Yeah.
random art. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you kinda
Yeah,
have to
they were just
shed
kinda
your popular
sounds.
album, your
Yeah,
popular fans in order to do what you wanna do. Like, Lorde has my
100%.
big Lorde conspiracy theory is she's never meant to be this famous, and that's why, like,
Mhm.
she's got all this anguish, and also, like, people, like, have such a microscope or yeah, microscope? Yeah. Like,
Microscope.
her albums are under a microscope and stuff like that because like, she's not meant to be this popular.
No.
She should be wise
Oh,
blood.
then in 1965, since A Hard Day's Night was so successful, the studios give the Beatles, like, a ton of money to make
Mhm.
another movie with, like, all these exotic locations, and they're also filming it in color, and they filmed the movie Help,
Okay.
and with the accompanying soundtrack. Help, I
And
need somebody.
it's a great record too. All of these records are good. Like, oh, I asked Reese's mom because she's 73. We were asking her about the Beatles
Yeah.
and being like, "Oh, like, what songs, like, did you like, at your like, at high school dances, like, what were they playing or whatever?" And she was saying, like, "Honestly, I love the Beatles, and I would never have admitted this at the time, but, like, the Rolling Stones made music that you actually wanna dance to." But she also said when she was 15, she thought to herself she woke up one day and went, "I'm gonna listen to Yesterday once every day of my life."
Wow.
And I was like, "That is a 15-year-old's thought." To be like, "I think I will listen to this song every day."
That's like me with "Sugar We're Going Down" by Fall Out Boy, and I've listened to that song most days of my life
I'm
since
just
it's
a
come
notch in
out.
your bedpost, but you're just a
You're just a
line in a
fighting
song.
song. That's what he does live.
Yeah, and she was a George girl.
Okay, this checks out.
Yes.
George is becoming more and more appealing, and I feel like I feel like you already get it, but I feel like the listeners,
We'll get on
you'll
the
get
George train.
you'll get on the George train,
Well, the others are so
and in a big way.
insane.
This
Like
is the thing, except for Bria.
I
What's
know, but
Ringo
somebody in the
doing?
comments was like, "Carly is Ringo," and I was like, "Shut the fuck up." No.
Yeah, wasn't it also like Blair is George Harrison and
Yeah.
Carly's
I was
Ringo? I'm
like,
like,
first of all,
"That's
I would
so mean."
never be that unproblematic and enjoy fame. Like, for you to think that I would ever be that unbothered is kind of you, but it would simply never be I would never be the person in the band to be like, "I'm just happy to play drums." I'd be, like, sick in the head, like, I need to be an artist, and also I need to cheat on my wife. Like, I would
Yeah.
be ill. Like
I think that as I'm going along, I think that, I don't know. I'm still really stuck on which Beatle we are.
I know it's hard. It's
I think I'm
hard.
I think I'm pretty solidly a John or a Paul.
I do. I actually the more I we learn them, I do actually think you're Paul coded. I really think you've got Paul in you. In this like for I've been watching a lot of interviews with them. I think Paul is really good at being famous or he's become very good at being famous, like very
Mhm.
personable and like learned to like adapt, which I think you are very adaptable. And I also could see you becoming like wife guy, but in you'd be like 35 and you're like I'm all of a
Yeah.
sudden like
I feel I'm between John and George for you.
yeah, I agree.
I
I
think that,
think in
like,
my
both
darkest
yeah,
hour,
you're
I'm
John.
John Lennon, of course. Like, I
Yeah.
can see that, but also, like, it's not like George is awesome either, but I love them all. Like, I really do love them all, so I'm not mad at any of them.
Yeah.
I definitely could see myself being like, "I'm unhappy here, so I'm instead of becoming the best guitar player I can be in The Beatles, I'm gonna learn sitar."
Yeah.
Like, I can see myself doing that. Like, I feel like in the 60s, I would have gotten too into India.
Well,
Like
this is you with the banjo now, I feel like.
yes.
You have a bad week and you're like, "I've rented a banjo from Long McQuaid."
Yeah, I'm like, "I'm going to become a baker." Like, you don't understand. Like, really me and George both had that thing of, like, really searching for
Yes.
ourselves in something.
Yes,
Maybe I'll play the
exactly.
banjo and that will unlock something in my brain and everything will be okay.
The banjo will fix me, surely.
The banjo will fix me
Surely the banjo is what I've been missing.
this whole time,
Not
right?
balance, the
No,
banjo. I'm
if I play
unbalanced
the
because 'cause I'm
banjo,
not
then everything
carrying
will
a
be
banjo,
okay.
and I get it.
Yeah.
So, mid-October 1965, the Beatles, they entered the recording studio. They're like, "What's up? We finally have some time to sit down and record an
Yeah,
album."
this schedule has been nuts.
Yeah, so this is the first time that they're kinda uninterrupted. They're going in and they're recording an album. They're also smoking a ton of pot. They're just
As Courtney Love
schmirking it up.
has confirmed in my
Yeah,
YouTube
Courtney Love has
comments
confirmed in Carly's YouTube
that
comments the
they
Beatles like to smoke pot.
yeah. You know when
Thank
you
you,
say, like, kind of
Courtney
an
Love.
offhanded joke? You're like, "Ha ha ha, this is when the Beatles were on LSD," and then Courtney
Yeah.
Love is in your YouTube comments being like, "Actually,
Actually,
the Beatles were much more pot than as advertised LSD."
I think it's cool that you got, actually by Courtney Love.
No, I have nothing like, every time I talk about her, there are people online who are like, "She is nuts," and I do think she is because she's experienced one of the most horrific traumas known
Oh,
to man.
yeah.
Like, truly could not even fathom, like, what it must be like to not only have your partner die, but be blamed for your partner's death. I would
No,
not
it's
be living.
insane. Yeah.
Um, but she is, like, wild, and
Yeah.
nothing but love. It's how I feel about Geminis, where I'm like, "You are insane, and that
Yeah.
is the part of you that I actually love the most because you are authentically unhinged."
Yeah. I also Hole gotta be one of my
Oh,
favorite bands.
I
I
this is
love
the other
Hole.
thing. This is the greatest tragedy I feel of the not the greatest tragedy. It's actually objectively very sad that Kurt Cobain died and that she got blamed for his death. Um,
Yes.
but that band rocks. Not to be
Dude,
like it's better than Nirvana, but like I'm sorry it is. Like I'm sorry. Like Celebrity Skin.
yeah, like, dude, fucking, Doll Parts
Oh,
used to rip me up. That whole, like, Miss World album is so good. Jennifer's Body, all-time banger. But, I think it's, like, Hole also, I feel like just because they were around for longer, I do wonder what I think Nirvana probably would've gone in a similar direction that, like, we did see Foo Fighters go,
yes, I agree.
which I do think that Foo Fighters do not get their laurels for how, influential they were. Like, they
Totally.
were like dad rock that actually lasts. Like, I remember when Echo Silence, Patience and Grace came out. This is dating me so much, but I remember when it came out, I got the CD, and I was like, "This is a crazy album." Like, I
Yeah.
didn't know that they could do this.
Well, and this is just like that's the basis of time. I don't know a lot about Foo Fighters. All I know about Foo Fighters is it's not the Foo Fighters, it's Foo Fighters. And I know it's Dave Grohl. That's really all I know about Foo Fighters. But
I don't know
like
if you'd like Foo Fighters,
I
if I'm
don't
being
think I would.
honest.
I don't think I would. There's a couple of I think I like a lot of the music that you like, but I think you like more music that I like. Like I
I
feel
like
like
a lot of rock too. Like, I'm an unashamed 3 Days Grace,
I love that for
Nickelback,
you though. But like I
like
love that for you. I really do.
Mhm,
Um but I do think like we've talked about this that like Nirvana if Kurt Cobain had lived would become Coldplay. And I mean that in a loving
mhm.
way where like you listen to some early Coldplay and you're like this is good. But
Yeah,
it's just like
I'm a Coldplay defender,
but
down
if they're
bad.
around long and any band is around long enough to become popular, like when Ed Sheeran first came out, like Ed Sheeran was cool. Can
Yeah.
you imagine a time now that Ed Sheeran was cool? Because it's hard
Uh,
to fathom.
I liked
Like,
when he rapped and sang.
yeah,
"So I'm gonna blaze soft flame from the side of the stage."
that is literally Reese's origin story, like, a villain origin story. There's nothing he hates more than Ed Sheeran rapping and slapping on the guitar. Like, he's like, all he does is go like, and I'm like, "Exactly.
Yeah.
And your
I
point?"
I do think that that interestingly ties into the Beatles
Okay. Go
because,
back. Go
um
off.
because when we do see the Beatles break up, they break up at a very high point, and one of the big arguments of people who are really upset about it is sort of like, "Well, did you just wanna see them, like,
Be
start
bad.
being really shitty?" And you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
like
Mhm.
what would a really bad Beatles record be? Because all of them have merit. I will
Yeah.
defend early Beatles to the day I die. In the
Oh,
same way I
yeah.
will defend Beach Boys with my
Mhm.
last breathing breath of happiness is still an emotion. Like, do you know what I
Yes.
mean? Like simplicity is
Absolutely.
valuable.
Yeah.
So it would be funny to like imagine what that horrible record would be.
This is the thing. So, they're back in the studio, they're recording Rubber Soul, okay?
Oh, I
S
love Rubber Soul.
this makes, this marks a big shift for the Beatles into kind of like they are writing things that are more lyrical, like, the fans are now looking at the
Yeah, I'm
lyrics
gonna
and
look
being
up
like
while you're talking about this, just I wanna see the track list while we're doing this.
yeah, it's crazy.
Um,
So, they're smoking a lot of weed.
this is up there for me. I
Yeah,
fuck
Rubber
with this
Soul is a
album.
crazy album,
This
and
and
this is a big
Revolution
shift.
are big for me, and
So
also
they yeah.
White
So
Album.
they're like
Okay.
they're writing, they're making some music. It's hailed as critics as kind of like the Beatles start being looked at as like a lot more legitimate as artists.
It's it's
Um,
it's like folklore.
yes.
If
The
if she didn't do
piece of
tortured poets,
folklore.
like, what would the Beatles' tortured poets
Yes.
department be?
Ugh, I don't even wanna
It
think
would
about
just
it.
be John Lennon at his worst, because that's always the worst album of people who are genuinely talented is. It's not, like, bad, it's just they're doing way too much.
Yeah. So they also start being like more experimental on this album. They're using different instruments, they're getting more creative, they have more studio freedom. Like it's just kind of like a perfect kind of mishmash of all these different factors happening that leads to this really great album.
Love.
They also this marks a shift in the music industry from popular music coming out as singles and then less focus on
Right,
the
like an
albums, more of like
album.
yeah, like, now we're getting, like this is, like, an album that's meant to be listened to as an album, like, it
Bring
holds
it
legitimacy
back.
as a piece of
Bring it
art.
back. Taylor Swift kinda does the album of it all, but even then, she's, like, galaxy braining in the way of, like, yes, it's a concept album, but it's not really. It's a collection of singles that happen to be, like, slotted into concepts.
Yeah.
I
Well,
want an album.
I don't know if you know my maybe biggest hot take that pisses everyone off, but
Ooh.
it's that we need to go back to paying for music.
No, I know
Um,
what you mean.
it's ruining the industry, and I think we're already kinda naturally going back there with people buying vinyls, like, people are starting to buy CDs again, like, I do think that, like, it's ruining this idea that, like, we can build up musicians who we wanna see strive.
It
Um,
devalues as well, like, it
y
doesn't really
yeah,
feel like you can value what like, the
yeah,
fact that and I don't think we should gatekeep, like, let's say that, like, I think gatekeeping is ultimately bad, and I do think that's one of the greatest benefits of social media, that, like,
mhm,
people can game the system to succeed, right? Like,
yes,
um, but, like, the fact that, like, I could drop a single today just hopping on the mic and going on GarageBand, and it's, like, there in the same way as somebody who doesn't even necessarily have to be famous, but somebody who's, like, put work into creating a piece of art,
yeah,
and it's distributed the same exact way is strange. Like, it'd be like
mhm,
if every single movie just came out on YouTube. Like, I love
yeah,
YouTube. I think there are some YouTubers that create content that is akin to some like, a really good documentary.
sure,
It's not my stuff. Like, my stuff
yeah,
is different. I make it in a week, you know? Like, it's different
yeah,
than what a movie would be. And I think
mhm,
also permanence is such a thing of, like, now I wanna buy stuff on DVD even though I don't have a DVD player because I'm like, "What if it goes away?"
yeah. Well, I think this is the big thing. I think that like losing stuff on the internet is going to become a bigger and bigger threat. I also think that we're going to see a platform rise up soon that is more paid access. And I think it's going to be Substacked. I think that people are
Ooh.
going to build careers off Substacked. And I think this is where we're going to see the next kind of major artists going. This is my prediction. I got
Like,
it a
writing?
little bit from the internet. I think that, no, I think it's going to be
Like,
like an art
all.
engagement. Like, I think it's going to be closer to like Tumblr.
Oh,
I think this is where we're going.
I
This is my
love.
prediction, and I'm honestly kinda good with pop culture predictions, I have to be
You
honest.
are.
And I do think that, like, we're
Because
gonna
you
see a
don't make
shift,
a lot. Like, the ones that you do make, you've thought
and there are
about.
also things that, like, other people are also saying, like, I'm not pulling them out of my
Yeah.
ass. Like, it's like, I think that we're gonna see just having to pay for music again in a way that will be beneficial to, the music industry. There will always be ways to get stuff for free,
Girl,
obviously. I
pirate.
mean,
It's fine. Don't worry about
this
it.
is the thing, like, they'll still be pirating. I don't think Spotify's going away anytime soon. Get back to the fucking Beatles.
Okay. Let's do it.
Bitch. Okay, so in 1965, also, the Queen of England makes all the Beatles members of the British Empire, so they get their MBEs.
Right, because John Lennon gives it back.
Yeah, he
Ah,
gives them back later, and it's kinda scandalous, people are kinda mad, people are returning their MBEs, they're like, "You should make the Beatles blah, 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 blah,
get
blah."
over it. People in
Yeah.
all of history have been so fucking boring and hate fun.
Yeah,
At
exactly.
all
Brian
times.
Epstein, their manager, obviously gay icon Brian Epstein, whom I'm become fully obsessed with,
Yes.
is, like, very happy about this. He's like, "Yay, great, blah, blah, blah."
Icon legend.
So now we move on to 1966. So by 1966, the
1966.
66
London.
London, England. So by this time, the 60s are in full spring. There's like, a lot of contention. People are against the Vietnam Wars. There's race riots happening. There's the hippies emerging.
Okay.
Basically everything that's covered in the seminal musical Hair.
So if
This
you have
is
more questions,
consult
just
the musical
just
Hair.
consult Hair.
I wanted that. I love Hair.
Actually, big blind spot for me.
Ugh,
I should watch it.
you should. I've never actually watched the movie. No, you know what? Yes, I
Or
have. I
even
lied.
listen to the,
Soundtrack is great. I
yeah.
have it on vinyl. I can play it for you.
Okay, great.
So, and then in March 1966, John Lennon makes the famous quote that the Beatles are more popular than Jesus.
And this went over fine, right?
And this went over
People loved
fine.
it and thought and understood that it was a joke, and it
Yeah.
hasn't because Christians famously huge sense of humor.
Yeah, huge sense of
Christians
humor. They were
love
not
to
mad
laugh.
at all. They were so happy. They were very it did not cause any sort of contention for them at all. He did not have to make a huge apology.
No, it's not something that literally I feel like everybody knows from culture still.
Yeah, not something that happened.
No.
Just kidding, it was a huge deal, people were very mad.
Yeah, it was very
If
much
that
being like,
wasn't
Well,
clear by our
Jesus is
tone.
actually Jesus." And yeah, he had to make an apology. And not to
Yeah.
defend John Lennon, like, I get like, he said some Oh, you bopped away for a second. Are you back?
Oh,
You're fine.
love
Okay,
it.
good. I wanted to make sure I could hear you and you could hear me. Um, like, not to defend John Lennon, I'm sure he said some crazy stuff, but, like, this one, I'm like, "Babe, it's a joke. Like,
Yeah,
this is a
like, let's
joke."
relax.
Like, they're known for
Yeah,
being cheeky at this time, like, let's
yeah.
chill.
No, this is the thing. So, also around this time, in April, they begin recording Revolver, and that's
Ugh,
released in August 1966. Revolver, huge foray, they're all doing LSD, they start writing kinda, like, more psychedelic stuff. It's, again, just, like, a seminal
I
album,
actually take
it's
it back.
excellent.
Rubber Soul, I love. Top Revolver, and then I guess
Oh.
White Album. I think I said Revolution before and I meant White Album, but that's my own brain melt. Um,
No, but I knew what you meant when you said
and you're
Revolution, I
like,
was like,
"Well, the
"She means the
album
White
that they are
Album."
on."
Yeah, White Album, it's fine.
Yeah, I've told you
So
the story, and I'll stop derailing, but this is Beatles related.
yes,
I learned guitar when I was, like I took guitar lessons when I was, like, 11 and 12.
huge.
Love it.
Yeah.
Very fun,
Love,
and I learned from this
love.
guy named Rob. He was just, like, a man with a ponytail, like a 50-year-old man with a ponytail who drove around in a VW
Iconic.
van. You know the type.
Nice. You know.
And he got, like, a Beatles songbook, and he was like, "Oh, we can learn, like, a Beatles song. What's your favorite Beatles song? That's what we'll learn on guitar." And I was like, "Eleanor Rigby," and he was like, "Oh my god. You're
Why?
11. What the fuck is
Why
wrong with you?"
Eleanor
He's like, "I thought you were gonna
Rigby?
sing, like, Hey Jude." Like, what? And I think about that all the time because if I was him, I'd be like,
Oh my
"Jesus
god.
Christ.
Jesus.
Why is
That's
that your
really funny.
that's your favorite Beatles song? All the Lonely People? Where do they all come from? All the lonely people, where do they all belong? You're sick." And that is one of my favorite
Yeah, no.
top 5 Beatles songs. I do love that song, but I think about it all the time being like, "Okay, I was a depressed child."
Yeah.
Anyways,
And what else is freaking new?
honestly, I'm gonna oh my god, having a stroke. I'm a depressed adult.
I'm a depressed
Continue,
adult.
talk about Revolution.
I'm a depressed adult. So
No,
yeah,
Revolver, what is
Revolver.
wrong with me? I gotta listen
You're
to those I
fine.
gotta listen to, like, all of them, and then it'll be in my brain
Yeah.
again.
I know, I don't know what's my favorite, honestly. Maybe Abbey Road, is that unpopular? I
No,
love
I
Abbey
love Abbey
Road.
Road. People hate Abbey Road. I hadn't it was one that I listened to as a kid a lot, so I didn't like it. Listening back, that, like, B-side that's, like, a bunch of one-minute songs,
Mhm.
fucking banger after
Really
banger,
cool. Yeah,
crazy.
it's
Yeah,
iconic. So, they make Revolver in the studio, it's an LSD album. Again, huge success, all this stuff. They're really, again, just becoming artists, like, they're becoming voices of a generation kinda thing.
truly.
And then they kinda say, um, "Okay, we're gonna stop touring," and they embark on their final tour, and their final show is at Candlestick Park in San Francisco on August 29th, 1966.
That's today.
Um, holy shit.
Okay.
Oh my god.
Beautiful. Well, it's not
Damn!
1966, but
I wish. I freaking wish it was
I know, I
1966.
would have so much
Take
knowledge.
me
I could
back.
literally do what that guy does in Yesterday, the movie, where the Beatles don't exist.
Hey, you could yesterday?
I could yeah, except for the Beatles, I'd do something else. I'd be like, "Oh, I can
Yeah.
write any book that I kind of
Yeah.
remember and
You
be
could write
famous."
Harry
I
Potter
could
and
write
not be a
Harry
TERF.
Potter.
Also, as an aside, in September, John Lennon goes off and he films a war movie as an actor. Okay, vibes.
He's literally fucking Harry Styles coded. Well, I guess it's the opposite, but that's like what Harry Styles did. He did Dunkirk.
Yeah.
I gotta watch this
Yeah.
movie where John Lennon acts.
It's called How I Won the War.
Is he good?
I wanna watch it too. I don't know. I haven't seen it. But, so he does that, and then on, November 9th, 1966, John Lennon meets Yoko Ono in London at a private preview of her show. So he was already, like, familiar with Yoko Ono, he had read her book. He's
That's
particularly
Imagine.
fascinated by this.
'Cause it's in her book, like, Imagine stuff?
I
I
don't
think it
know.
is. I think
I'm
it's
not
like,
sure.
imagine a sky that's purple, and then the
Yeah,
sky
well, like,
opens
a
up.
lot of her work revolves around imagination,
Yeah.
like, this is her big thing, is she's, like, very pro imagination, she thinks that imagination is really revolutionary, as we can see
Okay, so
from
she's like
Imagine that she
me.
so she's kinda like me, she
She's
loves
kind of like an
imagination, shit.
improviser.
So, John Lennon's meets Yoko Ono, presumably this is when their affair begins, and then on November 24th, 1966, the Beatles begin recording Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club
Listen,
Band.
you're gonna say every album, and then I'm gonna go banger.
That's my favorite.
It's not my favorite because that
Banger.
was the one that we had on vinyl in my family's house, and, like, I've
Oh, yeah,
heard
of
it
course.
too much.
Well, it's also got an iconic cover, like,
Oh,
this is another thing the Beatles did is they really revolutionized, album
yes.
covers, like, just the change from moving from, like, just straight up pictures of the artist into, like, these really creative art
Yeah, it's
pieces
awesome.
is also really notable. Sergeant Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band is also one of the first concept albums, so it's got a pretty
Okay.
loose through line, and that's kind of becomes a real standard in rock music. You start to see a lot of it isn't like the first, but, like, doing this on such a pop music scale is pretty
It's, like,
huge.
new for pop musicians to try and be cool, it feels like.
Exactly. They also record this album very leisurely. They're like, usually you would go in to record an album, you would kinda do like a 9 to 5 thing with a lunch
Yeah.
break. They can just come in anytime and record whatever they want in whatever
'Cause they got
studio they want.
ideas. They're
They got
crafty and they're
ideas,
not touring anymore, which means they
man.
can actually, like, do crazy
This is the
shit. Like,
thing.
they don't have to write something that they can feasibly play.
This is, like, referred to as, like, the studio years of the Beatles,
Yeah.
right? Like, they're in studio, they're making art, in the studio, like, they're you know what I mean? And a lot of these songs that they end up recording on this and Revolver and stuff, like, they can't really even play them
Yeah,
live.
how would you?
Exactly. So,
That
1967 in June
1967.
1967, Sergeant Pepper is released, and it was, like, pop hits that were psychedelics. It was, like, you
What
know,
else?
psychedelia, all this stuff. They also perform All You Need Is Love for the Our World television special, which is the first television special to be broadcast worldwide, which
Oh,
is, watched by about 400,000,000 people.
work.
Some estimates are up to 700,000,000
That's
people,
insane.
and that sounds wrong to me, but apparently. So they're
Numbers
fully in
have
it. The hippie
no meaning
movement
to
has
me. Like,
arrived.
you could
Yeah,
say literally
exactly.
anything and I'd go, "Sure."
So they're fully in it. The hippie movement has arrived. They're attending meditation workshops. They also start recording Magical Mystery Tour.
Which I'll defend with my
Um
goddamn life.
The Magical Mystery Tour, the song has one of the best openings
Yes.
ever. That, like, bum, 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 dun, da-da, so good.
Also, I
But
when I was
it's
in Winnipeg, I went to an antique mall, and they had, like, a Magical Mystery Tour pop-up book, and I was gonna buy it, but
cool.
it was $90, and I was like, "No."
Yeah, no,
Ethically, I'm opposed to this.
not gonna happen.
Um, yeah, this is when a lot of the McLennan stuff happened, which we should have your roommate Sarah come on to talk about 'cause she's seemingly a John Lennon, Paul McCartney ship expert.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's sending me now, which is I'm obsessed with and don't want her to stop, but, like, literally, like, TikToks that people make still shipping them, like, to this day.
Oh, yeah. For sure.
And I'm like, honestly, I don't believe it, but facts are facts.
Well, do you wanna speak on MacLennan for a
Yes, I
moment?
won't speak super in depth because I don't have all the information, and I do think we could do some kind of
Yeah.
extra fun thing with it. But basically, it was
Yeah.
one of the first it's like Larry Stylinson before that existed, where people thought that John
Yeah.
Lennon and Paul McCartney were gay for each other, and basically it was like the first like gay ship. Like a lot of people attribute it to Star Trek, which is like on a actual fan level, I think probably true. But like
Yeah.
it's crazy to think about. So people there's a couple of things of, like, they would go on, like they were really good friends. It's the same thing as, like, Larry Silenson, where they go on, like, a trip to Paris together or, like,
Mhm.
do, like, photo shoots together, like, kinda just friend stuff that I don't wanna say that they're not gay because I don't have the information. I feel like it woulda come out by now. Feels like that would be
Yeah.
trendy. But, like, a lot of times, like, any kind of, like, close male friendship under the public eye is like, "Oh, so you kiss." So that's basically it. Like it's like a massive ship that still goes on today, people thinking Paul McCartney and John Lennon are fucking.
For sure. Well, and it's pretty well documented that John Lennon was at least, like, bi-curious,
And
if
I
not
mean, look at
bisexual.
him. By well documented, you mean look at a fucking picture of
Yeah.
him.
Exactly. He also him and Brian Epstein had a really interesting relationship where Brian Epstein was gay and, John Lennon, they kind of like it's unclear what they
Yeah.
did, but they definitely had some sort of homoeroticism going on.
Well, wasn't that like their whole
So,
dynamic was him like always putting Brian Epstein down? People were like, ha ha ha, like John hates Brian. And it's like, you know, how any mentally ill person flirts by being like ugly,
yeah.
ugly
Yeah.
gay. Do you like
Ugly,
me?
ugly gay loser.
He was
You
also
ugly
poly
gay
him and
loser.
Yoko were like poly, right? Like that was a big thing.
Probably.
I mean, just and again, look
That
at a
makes
photo.
sense. I mean, look at a photo.
That's a poly couple.
Look
They're
at a
about
photo.
to they're
That's a
going
poly
to
couple.
approach you from across the room saying, "We just saw you and we like your
And we
vibe.
just love
We
your
love your
vibe.
vibe."
We love your vibe. So they're recording Magical Mystery Tour on August 24th. The group were introduced to the Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in London, and then they travel to like his meditation retreats and stuff like that,
Yeah,
right?
is he the one that's like yeah,
Yes.
okay. He's the one that, like,
Yes.
loves money. He's like, "Peace and love, but
Yes.
also hundreds of thousands of dollars, please."
Yep.
You should watch
So,
later, but I just watched Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story. Have you seen that?
you know what? Sarah and I are going to watch that
You
tomorrow,
should. It's
actually. Because,
fucking funny.
yeah, it's one of her favorite movies. And I was like, I've never
It's
seen
one of
it, but I've
Reese's,
been
and I
always
really,
wanted to
really
see it.
liked it. But they have a lot of
Yeah, I want
Beatles
to watch
stuff and
it.
a lot of stuff of them, like, in India, fighting in India. It's very
Yeah.
funny. Um,
I'm the leader
and
of the
genuinely, the
Beatles.
last song in that movie text me after you watch it, because like, genuinely, the last song in that movie, like, makes me teary. Like, I'm like, "Okay." It's,
Really?
like, sweet, and it
Aw.
sounds good. Like, it's
Okay.
like a parody of musical biopics or whatever.
Yeah.
But, like, the songs sound very full and very real because it had a bunch of money. It was back when
Okay.
comedy movies got, like, hundreds of thousands of millions
Got
of
got
dollars.
funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, but they joke about that a lot in there, but continue.
Cool. I'll look into it. I do wanna watch it tomorrow.
Let me know what you think.
So, then in
Okay.
August, Brian Epstein dies from an accidental drug overdose.
Sad.
This is kind of hailed as the first big event that led to the breakup of the Beatles.
Yes.
Less because he directly died, but more because of kind of the rolling repercussions of it.
Yeah, finding new
Um,
management too and stuff like that, right?
yes. So basically, Brian Epstein's fear with the Beatles always was that he was gonna be replaced.
Yes.
He was not nearly as, savvy or experienced as other managers who were managing other bands that were, like, close to the
But he
Beatles'
was
size. So
young
he
and gay and cool, which
young and
money
gay and
can't
cool,
buy.
that's money can't buy me gays, am
Can't
I
buy
right? The
me
famous Beatles hit.
gays.
So he's just kinda like he's always afraid of being
Yes.
replaced, which is really heartbreaking. He
Also, he's a
also,
gay
like,
Jewish
since the
man in the
band stopped
'60s, so,
touring
like,
he's
life
having
is
it
bad.
rough. He's gay, he's Jewish, life is bad. And then his influence on the band starts slipping when they stop touring because they have less need of him as a
Yeah,
manager,
yeah.
right? And so after he dies, the band starts to become pretty, like, lost for direction. They no longer have someone who's, like, leading them, who's, like, looking over their
Okay.
choices. His death was also incredibly sad. The Beatles were
Yes.
on a meditation retreat in Wales, and he was, like it was a public holiday, and he had, like, 2 friends in town that he wanted to spend time with, um, or, like, that were, like, the only people around to spend time with him, and he was kinda bummed out. He was like, "I'm not seeing, like, anyone really on this public holiday, like, I'm just bummed out." He went to dinner with them, he drank a lot, and then took a bunch of sleeping pills, and that's basically how he died. It's debated whether or not it was a
That's
suicide.
tough.
It was, um it was labeled accidental, like, the official report is that it was
But,
accidental,
like, you
but,
don't
like, there
know.
is still a lot of debate that, like, this guy was just, like his life is so it just makes me
Well,
miserable.
especially, like, to continue to be like, I think that, like, oftentimes people when you look at, like, one of their greatest fears that, like, oftentimes motivates them, you can kind of see, like, if somebody's greatest there's people's, like, greatest fears oftentimes can, like, kind of be a window into, like, how they are. And to
Yeah.
constantly fear being replaced even when you are managing a massive band, like,
Yeah.
you're just torturing yourself, which is more emblematic to me of just, like, horrible mental illness, right? Like, it's being
Absolutely.
afraid of, like, when I'm in a relationship, what if this ends? What's gonna happen? I'll be ruined, as opposed to being like, "Yeah, that would really suck to be replaced by the Beatles, but, like, I'll be fine."
Yeah. Well, this is the thing
And he
where,
can't
like,
be gay.
he can't be gay, he can barely be Jewish, like,
Life is
it's
bad.
rough. They also at one point, I forget the name of the song, I'm gonna remember it,
Okay.
and it's gonna be so stupid, but, like, they basically write, like, a mocking song of him that really upsets him at
It's not
one
like The
point.
Rich Man,
Yeah, "Baby, You're a
and
Rich
it
Man," that's
sounds
what it
like
is.
you're a rich F slur.
Yeah,
And it's also about him
and so
anyway,
it's
but it's
like
also just, like, being like, "You're a rich man." Yeah. Which is, let's say it,
yeah.
mean.
It's mean, and, like, obviously they meant it as a joke and good fun or
But
whatever,
it's like
but,
when you
like,
joke about the
you know,
one thing
this
you shouldn't joke about. Like, you can joke about so much with your friends, but then you do the one thing that actually hurts.
yeah, and so he's in a, like, down slump already because he's already feeling like the Beatles don't really need me anymore. At the time, the Rolling Stones had this
Yes.
crazy
Got them that
manager
crazy deal.
who gets them this, like, crazy deal that ends up to basically be, like, a scam.
Yeah.
His name is Alan Klein,
Right, he got them, like,
and,
that crazy deal, and then everyone was like, "Well, why the fuck we're the Beatles. We're the
yeah,
Beatles, why are we not getting the crazy deal?" But it's
yeah, and
like,
they're
yeah,
just
he
sorta like,
signed
"Well,
away
where's our
their like, he didn't
deal?"
have to pay them or something, right?
Yeah, you didn't have to pay them for, like, 17 years or something stupid
Bitch,
like that,
and
like, it
respectfully,
was a dumb
like, you
deal.
guys went to the London School of Economics. You gotta read the
Yeah,
contract. But I understand. I
and
feel like I am the
yeah.
kind of person that if I ever got really famous, I would be fully stolen from.
Yeah.
Somebody
Alan Klein also, like it's reported that, like, when he heard that Brian Epstein died, he, like, heard it on the radio and he was just like, "Oh, I got the
oh
Beatles are mine now,"
god.
which is like, "You're so scum,
Like,
dude," like
take a moment. That is one of my favorite kind of,
yeah.
like, jokes in TV shows, though, if somebody's, really like, they're, like, an understudy or something, and then they're like, "Oh my god, Diane got in a car accident," and then they're like, "Yes!"
Mhm.
Like, I think that's, like, a funny joke, but in real
"Oh,
life
no.
oh, I mean, it's very
No,
sad,
it's
but
like, oh,
yes!
you're evil. You're
Yeah, but I'm like,
evil,
"Babe,
so you realize you're
that's a
evil."
comedy joke. What you're
Yeah,
describing is
exactly.
just being evil."
No, this is the thing. So then they, like, his death just sounds so lonely and so
Yeah.
sad. It makes me wanna die. I literally wrote that down. It's so sad. John Lennon is quoted as saying, "We collapsed. I knew we were in trouble then. I didn't really have any misconceptions about our ability to do anything other than play music, and I was scared. I thought we fucking had it now."
Yeah, that's
Patty
tough.
Boyd says that Paul and George were in complete shock. "I don't think it could have been worse if they had heard their own fathers had dropped dead."
That would be
Following
so
this
sad, dude.
no,
Because
it's
this is your
devastating.
friend, right? Like, yes, you work
And
together,
it's the
but it's your
first person who
friend.
believed in you. It's
Yes.
like I think that, like, Brian Epstein believed in the Beatles when no one else really did. Like, he saw what they could be, and, like, I do not think that the Beatles would have
No.
reached the heights they did if they didn't have someone like him who was, gunning the track, who was like, "No, you guys are gonna be the biggest act in the
Yeah, and
world."
somebody
I
again
don't think that they would have had that belief in
who's like,
himself.
yes, maybe they don't have as much managerial experience, but they have the ability to, like, go in and convince people that you're cool.
Yeah. It just, like
That's sad.
it's so sad, and it's, like it's really kind of, like it's not the thing that made the Beatles break up, but it's really, like, the first thing in the start of a series of
Yeah, and you
events,
have
right?
to imagine that he's like a unifier, right? Like, if some of these
Yeah.
issues arose earlier on, maybe they still would have contributed to the end of the Beatles, but having somebody who is your manager who can kind of act as a go-between is more beneficial than just being
Yeah.
kind of let loose. The 4 craziest men in the
Absolutely.
world.
Absolutely, and that's really what he was doing was he took, like, 4 kind of rough guys and made them into superstars, and then they lost the one person who really understood
Yeah.
them. Yeah, I can't imagine having to make decisions about, like, worldwide fame, and then on top of that, losing the one person who has always known what's best for me.
Yes.
Like,
Well, it's also
I can't
helpful to
fathom.
have somebody who you trust and like, but also whose job is to, like, shape the business end of your career because even if you are
Yes.
good at business, like you need to be able to focus on your creative pursuits, which don't always make you a good business person or a good person who can manage your own
Yeah.
things. The kind of skills and the minds that you have to be in to create great art is not the mindset that allows you to make good business decisions, right? So it's helpful to have somebody being
Exactly.
like, okay, and I hear you. Let me talk to the studio. Let me talk to these people. Let me organize this. Um,
Yeah.
and your friend is dead and your brain isn't cooked. Like, it's really tough. And
It's a hard
those
combo.
5 people are really the only people that understand you, right? Like, they're the only people that have been there from the beginning.
Yeah. So
But
then
at least none
immediately
of them else
following
will die.
no one else will die and everything will be good. So then immediately following that, Magical Mystery Tour is an hour-long TV film. It gets released. It's their first thing that is, like, critically panned. People are like, "This is stupid. This sucks. I hate it," basically. Like, they
Sorry,
were
what did
like,
they say?
"This is just stupid. It sucks.
Okay,
I hate
got
it."
it.
They said, "It's stupid. It sucks. I hate it." And this is just kinda like the first thing that, like, people are just like, this is like a money grab. This has no creative, like, value. Like, this sucks. Like, this is stupid.
The
It's dumb. I
beginning
hate it."
of the Beatles not creating good stuff, even though they do. But you know what I mean? It's like the first thing
Yeah,
that people don't
exactly.
like.
And it's also just kinda like an hour-long TV film, guys, what are we doing? Like, some decisions questionable. So then we move on to 1968. In January, they launched Apple Corps, which is a recording studio, a label, a film division, and a boutique. So the Beatles have released their company, Apple.
Yeah, mama.
Really unique name. No one's ever gonna name
I don't
anything
think
else Apple.
anything will ever eclipse that name.
No, I think it's really good. No one else has named a company after fruit.
No.
So they launched this company. And then in February 1968, the Beatles travel with Maharishi Mahesh Yogis to Rishikesh, India, to take place in a 3-month meditation. The band all goes. Ringo purportedly is like, I don't want to eat spicy food. Packs a bunch of like beans in his suitcase because he's like, I'm scared of curry, which offensive,
On
yes,
brand?
but also
Absolutely.
on brand for sure. Like, like stand on stand on your business, Ringo.
Know yourself.
Um, yeah, and then he leaves pretty early on into the retreat because of a sore stomach, which checks
Yeah.
out.
He's been having nothing
So,
but canned beans.
yeah, John McCartney
Oh,
Paul McCart oh my god, John McCartney,
okay.
oh, Paul McCartney also leaves because he's just kinda bored. He's like, "This is, like, bullshit, whatever." Lennon and Harrison, they start to kinda, like they're still hanging out, but they're sorta like, "It's weird how much this guy loves money and how many celebrities are here," and this kind of it's kinda interesting that he's being accused of, like, sexually abusing women, and we're not really sure whether or not that's
Yeah.
true. And so Lennon leaves after 2 months, and then he drags George Harrison out, and George Harrison's kinda unconvinced. He's like, "No, I'm really into this." Like, he wants to
George
stay.
Harrison, Nothing But Love and
Um,
Light. Again, one of my favorite Beatles. Gives strong, "He's always been nice to me" energy.
no, this is the thing. He's being like, "He's always been nice to me. I'm really liking the India
Yeah.
retreat, so I wanna stay here." This trip to India becomes kinda infamous, like, it's ripped on a lot, and also just kinda like this guy Lennon writes "Sexy Sadie" about him instead of, Maharishi. It goes, "Sexy Sadie," kinda just dissing
That's
him.
funny.
And then Paul McCartney basically says, like, "We made a mistake trusting this guy, like, we thought there was more to him and there wasn't. He was just trying to get us out of a ton of money." And then in July, John Lennon opens his first art exhibition, so you see him start to work more with Yoko Ono. He's getting more into art. He's also at this point, John Lennon's published, like, 3 books or
Oh,
something, just, like, throughout his career.
I
Like, this
should
has been
read
happening for
these.
years. I just haven't mentioned it.
I'm
I
sure they're
know, they're all
mid,
called
but, like, I still should read it.
I know, that's
I
interesting.
like this era
Then
for him
also
too. I know this is when people start not liking him, but I like when he's just, like, kind of loosely famous for doing kind of weird shit.
well, he's kind of, like, in his element, you know what I mean? Like, again, unfortunately, I do have to take the position because I am a John
Me
Lennon
too,
defender in
no,
a
I
lot of
am
ways.
now. And
Um,
let's say it, beat
no,
the shit out of his wife. We're not saying he didn't. Horrible
no,
father to Ju to
yeah,
Julian.
to Julian, yeah. Never got a chance with
So,
Sean, so who
we'll never
knows?
know.
But, we'll never know. But, like, I do think that, like, this is kind of a period where, like, he's seeing what he wants to do in Yoko,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's a lot of what's going on is he's getting more into art, he's getting
Is
more
he
into,
married
like, a
still?
place where he feels. Yes, he's married to Cynthia still,
Good.
but not for long.
Good.
So,
And I will say
Yellow
too, one thing about
Submarine.
this before we talk about Yellow Submarine.
Yeah,
I think the reason I and defend is a strong word, but I will at least say, like, I have feelings to about him, let's say, is because he is
yes.
more often than not, people are like, "They were really complex," and I'm like, "Fuck off." Like, okay, when
Yeah,
people say it about, like, Johnny Depp, and I'm like, "Yeah, he is a victim of addiction." He also is, evil. Like,
yeah.
but with John Lennon, I'm like, there's, like, a lot of real complexity there, and that, like, a lot of the horrible things he did we know about because he's like, "I was a bad person and I'm trying to be better," and would, like, write songs, "I used to be cruel to my woman, I beat her and kept her apart from the things that she loved," like,
Yeah.
there's a lot of, like it's interesting, at least, to be like, this is
Well,
somebody
this is
who
yeah,
was actively trying to take accountability and own up to the things that they did. Is he perfect? No.
absolutely.
Do I stand by him as a perfect person? No, and if people have issue with him, I think that's 100% valid. But there are very few people that I
Yeah.
do think actually fill in that, like, name of being like, "This person is complex and has more to them."
Well, this is the thing where, like, I feel confident saying on a public platform that I'm a John Lennon
Mhm.
defender because he is one of those kind of, like, rare cases where, like, you have someone who's done a lot of shitty things, but also has formed culture at such an intrinsic, kind of immeasurable level, and also on top of that, like, just had a lot of unlearning to do at a time when unlearning was not a
Yeah, he
thing. I mean,
didn't
it's
have
barely
to
a
do
thing
this, like,
now.
he could just remain shit,
No.
but he did try,
Yeah.
and I remember there's, like, a quote where
He made an
he talked
effort.
about how, like, the reason he's so obsessed with peace is because he's, like, a violent person, like, he's, like he was talking about those lyrics as well, of being like,
Mhm.
"I did that. I am an angry
Mhm.
person, and I have a tendency towards violence, and that's why I focus on peace so much because I know that it's something that can be achieved, even
Yeah.
coming from something that is intrinsically violent." And, say what you will, like, he fucking put his money where his mouth is for a lot of the stuff. He gave
Yeah.
back that knighthood. Him and Yoko, when people are like, "Ha, ha, ha, they stayed in bed." I'm like, "Bitch, they got, like, press on peace." Like, they talked about
Yeah.
peace all the time. They opposed so much war, like, there are a lot of people
Mhm.
who didn't do any of that. I love Mick Jagger. He was just fucking his way through, the world. Like,
Oh, yeah,
there is
absolutely.
something to be said about, like, John Lennon truly I have to admire somebody who, like you said, with unlearning wasn't a thing at that point, but really tried to be better.
This is the thing. This is why I feel like we can get away with being like John Lennon, ultimately. Like, how do you quantify someone as, like, a good or bad
No.
person? I think he was flawed. I think he was someone who wanted fame to fill a hole in his life and in his heart, and I think that, like, he achieved it in many ways, and then in a lot of ways, like, he didn't give it up, but he, like, refocused in a way that, like, as corny as we think it is, it's like, what are you supposed to do at that point? Like, you're not gonna get any more famous than John Lennon was in the
Well, and
'60s.
as I was talking comparing you to Paul a little bit before, like, where Paul I do think is fairly good at being famous now, I don't really think John was. Like, that's why he got shot. And, like,
Mhm.
in a different documentary I watched about them post breakup, he there was, like, a Vietnam War vet who showed up at John Lennon's house when he was recording, and he was like, "Oh, I'll just go out and talk to them." And this is somebody suffering from
Yeah.
PTSD who was unhinged, like, and not well. It was a very dangerous situation, and he still went out there
Oh,
because I
yes.
think that, like, he wanted connection and he sought fame to feel connection, which is not
Mhm.
good. Um,
Yeah.
so, like, it makes sense that a lot of this stuff happened, like, I just don't think he was really good at like, meant to be famous, and that's not to say that he wasn't famous, he was the
Yeah.
most famous a person can be, but, like, I think that's
Yes.
why a lot of these people were also drawn to, like, Kurt Cobain or whatever, and he is a genius, and there is obviously this capacity to, like, infantilize these geniuses. He was full of agency and made his own choices, but you can also admit that being like, it like, I don't think I would be good at being a famous person, like, the most famous person in the world, like,
Yeah.
it wouldn't
Yeah.
be good. But there are people that are very good at it, and there are people that aren't. Justin Bieber
Yeah.
can't handle it. Like,
Yeah.
he can't even and that's sad. Like, it's not like, "Ha, ha, ha," it's sad, where there's people that like Harry Styles who seems to have, like, an ability to set boundaries and still enjoy it, Like, it's just
Yeah.
interesting in that way.
Yeah, this is the thing. I think it's, Yeah, I just think it's interesting to look at him in that way, so anyways, Yellow Submarine is released, and also in August, Cynthia Lennon divorces John on grounds of adultery, so she's like, "I'm outta here." I'm not of the belief that he was ever really good to Cynthia or their son, so
Good
that's
for her.
fine. And then they get into the studio and they start recording the White Album. Um, this is kind of like a bit
Turn
of
it up.
a insane album because it's kinda like you start to see the Beatles be like, "Oh, it's really like there's John songs and then there's Paul's songs." And then, like the rest are kinda hanging out. They do have Eric Clapton on the album to play the guitar solo on While My Guitar Gently
Oh.
Weeps, which
Yeah,
is
because George gets, like,
iconic.
his one song on every album. So he's
Yeah,
fucking
this is the thing,
stewing
they're
at this
kind of
point.
like
Like, he's pissed.
yeah, like George is getting pissed off because he's like he just has, like, this back catalog of songs, and they're not letting him really put more than 1 or 2 songs in an album, and he's kinda like, "Well, like, what am I even doing
And
here?"
they've been, like, very well, John
Star
Lennon, dead, spoiler alert. But Paul McCartney, in
Mhm,
recent years in lots of interviews, is very big on being like, "That was fucked up." His songs are, like,
yeah,
the best, like, because they're also, like, you're only putting out, like, 7 George songs, they're all bangers. It's like
yeah,
Something, which is nuts. That song is
yeah,
crazy good. While My
it's
Guitar
nuts,
Gently
yeah,
Weeps, um, Here Comes the Sun.
yeah.
Like,
Well, he's, like, become a really prolific songwriter, whereas I think that, like, John and Paul went in with this partnership and they were like, "We're the writers,
yeah.
we're gonna, like, grow together, whatever," and they become really, really great songwriters, but then you see George emerge as really just kind of like a visionary musical kind of genius, and they're just sort of like, "Yeah, but also, like, we have to
Well,
split
we
all the writing credits,
kind of
we write
already
the
agreed
album,
on
so blah,
this
blah,
because
blah,
we
blah,
made a
blah." Yeah, we
business,
kind of already
and
do
it's
this, this
Lennon
is kind of already
McCartney.
our thing.
It's not Lennon McCartney Harrison, we can't change it,
Yeah,
'cause it's already kind of like we filed paperwork
yeah.
and whatever.
So the relations are kind of openly division divisive. Ringo Starr quits the band for 2 weeks. They record Back in the USSR and Dear Prudence without Ringo and McCartney on
They were
drums.
upset. This is when he
Um,
quit, and then they, like, ask him to come back, right?
yeah, they ask him to come back. He goes to, like, Greece or whatever and writes Octopus's
Yes,
Garden
which
and,
I
like,
will that's the song I'll
s
defend with my goddamn life. That
it's a
song is so
banger.
good.
So no, go
He
ahead.
quits because he feels like he's being excluded, is kind of the thing. So he
Mhm,
writes Octopus's Garden, comes back, and then Paul goes and knocks on his door and is like, "I want you, please come back." And he's like,
mhm.
"Well, you guys, like, you 3 all get along so well, and you don't like me, like, whatever." And then Paul's like, "I thought it was you 3. Like, I feel that way."
Yeah,
And then he's like, "Okay, maybe I'll come back." And then the same thing happens with John and George, where they're both like, I thought it was you 3 that get along and everyone hates
I
me."
thought it was you 3,
So then they
yeah.
invite him back,
Yep.
and they have a big sign in the studio when he comes back that says, "Welcome back, Ringo," and they cover his drum set in flowers.
Yeah,
'Cause you need Ringo.
which
Like,
is
you need
it's very
one
cute.
single fucking normal person.
Yeah. Well, it's also like you get this like there's this kind of narrative that I think has gotten more intense since the Beatles did break up that they all just like hated each other. It's like no, they were just under a lot of
They're
stress
brothers.
and
Like,
they were really they were brothers. They were in it
and it's that kind of
together.
thing
And
of,
I think
like,
that that's something that we
the
forget
opposite
in
of
these narratives.
love isn't hate, it's indifference, where it's like
Yeah.
the people that you care the most about are the ones your relationships will be the most fraught. Like, if you don't like
Yeah.
someone, you don't write a bunch of diss tracks about them. Like, if
Yeah.
they like, the people that you hate are the ones that you feel so deeply about, right? Like, it is
Yeah.
love.
Exactly. It is love. But also at the same time, John Lennon calls John McCartney's music granny music, specifically dissing Obla Di Obla
That
Da.
first of all, that song
Um,
fucking rocks. Also,
yeah.
I really wanna know what's going on in your brain because you said John McCartney again, and I wanna know
Oh,
who.
fuck me. Sorry.
Maybe this is a thing though, but, like, maybe this is, like, we
John
start, like,
McCartney.
a when we do improv together, we're John McCartney, there's something
John
here.
McCartney, yeah,
Um,
exactly.
that song is
No,
great.
sorry,
I
it's
don't.
John Lennon disses Paul McCartney's
Yeah,
music,
and also
calling it granny
bold,
music.
fucking bold, like, those in glass houses should not throw
Yeah.
stones when you're making objectively some of the most unlistenable Beatles songs, like, good songs,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
unlistenable.
Again, let me bring up Revolution 9. This is also the time where John Lennon starts showing up with Yoko Ono when, like, the Beatles have always had a rule of, like, no
And
girlfriends in the
super
studio
late.
kinda thing.
And hey,
Yeah, like, just super late.
I gotta support
Um,
my fellow latecomers, like, it's a disease,
yeah.
but still,
Mhm.
there's no wives in the studio. He's like, "She's just gonna sit here and knit and talk and go through mail. She's gonna pay bills. Is that a
And
problem?"
And they're just sort of like, "Yeah, like, it's like, none of us can bring our girlfriends, so it's weird that you're bringing your
Yeah.
girlfriends." It's sort of like, "If I wore those pants, I'd be sitting with the art
Yeah.
freaks." So they've recalled it wasn't really pleasant to make. It's just getting more like, this is kind of the beginning of the end in another real way. They're all kinda pissed or whatever. The White Album is released in November, and then also in November, John and Yoko released their first album
I
together.
love that album.
So 1969, this is a
1969.
doozy of a year. So, in January, they play their last public performance on the rooftop of the Apple Corps building. This is what is, the performance that's shown in the movie Let It Be and also in the miniseries Get Back, so this is quite famous.
Okay.
Um, in March, John marries Linda and oh my
You
god.
really want to say John McCartney. It's kind of beautiful.
I literally wrote John. I actually wrote John in this one. I didn't even just say it. Literally wrote okay. So in March, Paul marries Linda and John marries Yoko Ono.
Love that.
And John and Yoko do the
And I
bed-ins for
love
peace in
Linda too.
Amsterdam and then in Montreal.
No, there's nobody who stands harder for a Beatles girlfriend than Carley Thorne. I love Linda because
Linda
she's
McCartney.
vegetarian, got Paul to be a vegetarian, still a vegetarian to this
Yeah.
day, so I have to stand with them. And
Mhm.
also, The Ballad of John and Yoko might be my favorite Beatles song.
Oh, it's a banger.
Oh, that song is so good.
When things are
It's also just one
going,
of those
they're gonna
like, you
crucify
listen to that
me.
and you're like, "Oh, right, like, this is how all music is now."
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
"Oh, right," like, you
Oh, I get
invented
it now.
kind of how music
I get
goes
it.
now.
I get it. So,
And they do the bed in
let it
Montreal, right? Did you say that?
in
Okay.
Amsterdam and then Montreal.
Okay, and th
So I know you hate it there, but guess
well, I
who else
like it
liked
more I
Montreal?
do
Me and
like
John
it,
Lennon
I
and
just
Yoko
have to
Ono.
I just think it's overrated. I still like
Okay.
Montreal.
Sure.
And I said I didn't
Sure.
like it because you told somebody who didn't
Sure.
speak French to move there.
As they should.
Work on your
We
French
need more Anglos
Duolingo.
in Montreal.
Duolingo, baby.
How hard is French is
French
easy.
is, I feel like, actually not that hard. Um,
Especially, like, Canadian French, it's just
make
like,
noises.
je parlais de Tim
Yeah,
Hortons,
that's true. You
like,
don't even have to really do
yeah.
accent work. Um,
No, you just kinda have to be like, "Quoi?
Quoi?
Vous allez?
Je m'appelle Carly. Um,
Allons-y, bitch."
Allons-y, bitch. So this is they're
Yeah.
lying in bed for peace. Do they have a
Yes.
specific goal? Like, when they're doing this, is it like, when are we're getting out when peace happens?
Basically,
I mean, I
I think they
support the
just
effort,
wanna
but I am
yeah.
confused.
I think they just wanna do, like, a press thing,
Okay.
honestly, like, that's really just what it
Fair.
sounds like to me. Um, then they're also recording an album, Let It Be, which is meant to be called Get Back, but it becomes Let It Be.
Mhm.
This album is reported in chunks, some in January 1968, then in 1969, and then somewhat in 1970. And then the idea was that they were gonna make this a movie, which they really didn't want to because Magical Mystery Tour flopped so hard,
Yes.
but then Paul McCartney was like, "Well, what if we, actually like, what if we just get someone to film us, like, developing new material and see what comes of that?" And so that was captured by director Michael Lindsay Hogg and eventually made into the movie Let It Be.
Okay.
Um, Lennon described the largely impromptu sessions as hell, the
Well,
most
these, like,
miserable
it
on
is
earth.
objectively hilarious to watch. Like, there are
Yeah,
clips, there are moments in that it's very amazing to, like, watch Paul McCartney just, like, sit there and stew and then write
yeah,
"Get Back." Like, it's crazy to
yeah.
see that, but also, like, he's so mad. George is so bitchy. Like, he's
Yes.
fucking mean. Like, Paul will be like, "Can you just play it like this?" And he'll be like, "Yeah, sure. I'll just do whatever you say."
Yeah, exactly. So they are like George at one point walks out and he's like, "We like, I don't wanna work at the film studios anymore. We need to relocate to Apple Studio," which they do. Um, they are like, it's just kind of it's a rough time. There's a new kind of business strain because they need new management. They want Alan Klein, who is the Rolling Stones manager. Everyone wants him except for Paul, who wants Linda's father, who's like a New York lawyer. And there's kinda
And that's
like
a tough sell. Like, that's
it's
I would
it's it's a tough
I
sell,
too
but I
would
do
he was
think that Paul was
correct.
kinda
He was
right.
correct, but I do understand if somebody said that to me, I'd be like, "No."
No, I don't want your girlfriend's dad to manage the band, like, that's so
Yeah.
weird. That's like a weird business tie-in too, where it's just like, "Oh, so now we're, like, intrinsically linked to your girlfriend, and if anything ever happens with her, we're
Yeah.
screwed?" Like, this is why it's hard when, like, people you work with get involved with your friends, but, that's not something I know anything about.
I'm like, "By
Not
the way,
something
I
that's
think that
happened to me.
I think that Reese's dad should manage the band. He should manage our
Yeah,
podcast, I think would actually be really
yeah.
good."
Yeah. Anyway, that never gets
No.
messy. So, uh, Klein and Eastman, who is, Linda Eastman, Linda McCartney, her father, Eastman. Klein and Eastman are temporarily both on the contract. Um, and then they like it's just conflict. They lose a bunch of like financial opportunities. Klein was named sole manager of the band eventually, and McCartney refuses to sign the management contract with Klein, which essentially leaves them with a choice, which is like, do you sign this contract or are the Beatles done?
Yeah.
So this is kind of what's happened. Around this time, Lennon has already kind of like formally quit the band.
Yes.
Like the band has like dissolved, but
Haven't
they
announced that.
haven't announced it. So like the band is for all intents and purposes still together
Mhm.
around this time. So then they it's just messy. There's also like stuff going on behind the scenes like the company that John and Paul own together for their songwriting publishing, they Paul goes
Yes.
behind John's back and starts buying up
Shares.
shares. So he owes something like 100,000 more shares in
Eh,
the company than
and
John
that's
does, even though
bad.
their agreement was always to be
Like, you
50-50.
can't do that. Like, that is I love Paul McCartney. Why?
It's sketchy. I get it in a way because, like, obviously, he did not trust this new manager. He thought he was gonna get screwed out of his money and his intellectual property, which, like, he was, like,
Yeah,
in a
coulda
lot of ways
happened.
correct, but
Yeah.
you can't
Tell
go
John.
behind your
You
partner's
gotta tell
back
John.
like that. You could just there's just, like, a lot of divisions forming,
Yeah.
right? And then in July, they begin recording Abbey Road, which is their last studio album. Their last recording session at Abbey Road was all 4 band members, is August 20th, and the last song they record is called The End. Abbey Road is then released in September. Around the same time, John releases his first single, Give Peace a Chance, and the Plastic Ono Band makes their concert debut at do you wanna guess where the Plastic Ono
No,
Band made their
where?
concert debut at? Varsity Stadium at the University of Toronto.
Wait, are you serious?
Yeah. Sorry, and just so you know, if you're not from Toronto, that is not a concert venue. That is the football field at U of T.
Like, what? Why?
This is like there's been like legendary concerts at
Varsity
Varsity
Stadium?
Stadium.
It's
Yeah,
just
it's
guys, I
nuts.
can't explain to you how much
It's a football
it's just an
field.
AstroTurf football field next to a busy
Yeah.
street with
They
bleachers.
also made it into an album called like Live Peace in Toronto. It's like
What the fuck? I gotta look
nuts.
this up.
This is the Plastic Ono Band's concert debut in a football field in Toronto on the campus of the University of Toronto.
That's awesome.
Insane.
I mean, it's
Yeah. And
insane.
then no, it's kinda cool. There's another story my dad told me about that. I feel like, but I don't know, I'm gonna get confirmation on that before I
Before you
tell
tell on
it,
the
but
podcast as
before I
truth.
tell it on the podcast. And then in November, John Lennon returns his Order of the British Empire to the Queen in protest of political events. And then 1970, John Lennon releases Instant Karma in January, and that's a bop. I love that
Mhm.
song so much. And then April 10th, 1970, the Beatles officially break up. Um,
This is like
so
and this is also like Paul is the one. He's like, "I quit."
Yeah. So Paul McCartney makes the announcement. He doesn't really tell anyone else that he's gonna announce it, and they're all like, "Okay, well, like, fuck, we wish we could have all done this together." Paul McCartney files the suit for the dissolution of the Beatles partnership on the 31st of December, 1970. The legal disputes continued for, like, 4 more years, so that it wasn't finalized until the 29th of December of 1974 when Lennon signed the paperwork terminating the partnership while he was on vacation with his family at Walt Disney World in
No
Florida.
better place to do it. You know, when you see just like a dad screaming into his phone at like Walt Disney World, that's Paul McCartney. Buy,
That's
sell,
yeah,
sell, sell, buy.
yeah, that's John Lennon breaking up the
Yes.
Beatles while at Walt Disney World. And then in May, Let It Be is released, and although Let It Be was the Beatles' final album release, it was mostly recorded before Abbey Road, which makes Abbey Road the final Beatles
Oh, I
recording. The
didn't know
Beatles are
that.
broken up.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's weird.
No, they go back in and they record Abbey Road after Let It Be. So Get Back is technically, or Let It Be is their second last album, but
It's
it's just
released and
recorded in a weird order. It's released last, but it was recorded before Abbey Road. So
oh
Abbey
my
Road is the
god. Okay,
final
this is really interesting. I
hurrah
feel like I learned quite
of the
a lot about
Beatles.
the Beatles, Blair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there we go.
We did it.
And the Beatles are broken up. Will we do another episode? I actually don't know yet. Probably. Yoko
Yeah,
Ono.
we gotta do
Yoko Ono
Yoko. We've
post
only
Beatles.
done how many have we done?
This third, Beatles
Yeah,
3.
we've got to do Yoko. I feel like we've got to do conspiracy theories. I got to figure out what.
Yeah, maybe Yoko and conspiracy
Yeah, because the
theories. We can
Paul
go
is
over
dead.
Paul
I got
is
to figure out
dead.
what's going on there.
So I think in summary, like it's, you know, what an amazing freaking career. I
Yes.
don't know. They also at this time are all developing solo projects, so, like, immediately
And
you
their
have, like, a
solo
George
projects
record, a John
all
records.
rock.
They're so
All
good.
Things Must
I got
Pass.
Band on the Run in vinyl recently, and what a banger fucking
All Things
album.
Must Pass is a triple album,
Oh, it's crazy.
and it's
Well, because by the time they broke up, George had this insane back catalog
the
of
songs are
songs that they wouldn't let
crazy,
him use. So he's just like, "Okay, I'm releasing a triple album, bitch, with, like, all these songs you guys missed
and
out
they're
on."
so good. All of those songs are so good. I mean, I love
Mhm.
Wings. I'll defend like, I love Wings. Jet
Jet. Ooh,
is
ooh,
gotta be up there
ooh.
for me in terms of, like, all-time favorite songs. And now
Iconic.
recently, through kind of doing this Beatles thing, I've fallen way down a John Lennon rabbit hole because I was never really into him, and now I'm like, "Okay, well, I mean, this is insane."
Yeah. There's stuff. There's stuff
Yeah,
here.
and I mean, I
So,
obviously
yeah, I
always
think
listen to "Merry Christmas, War Is Over."
oh, god, yeah. And then, the juxtaposition by the end of just, like, John and Paul is really funny, and the way that John's doing stuff, like, and Lindsay Ellis pointed it out in her video essay, but, like, the juxtaposition of A Day in a Life where Paul's lyrics are
Woke
like,
up,
"Woke up,
got out of bed.
got out of bed," and then John's lyrics are like, "He blew his mind out of the car. He didn't notice that." The lights are like,
Light a
"Oh my."
change.
So you guys kind of are on different
Yeah,
vibes.
ooh.
Paul also didn't really wanna be very political, he was kinda like
Republicans buy
I think that
sneakers
was
too.
but yeah, so I guess we'll end off there, and I think we will do another episode going over Yoko Ono and post-breakup stuff and the assassination of John
Yeah,
Lennon.
that's sad, but we have to.
It's very sad. We have to do it, it has to be it is writ, it must be
It must
done.
be done. Do we have a should we do our segment before we wrap up?
Yes.
Ready? Let's
Let
make
oh,
this
yeah. Let's make this
tragedy about
tragedy about
us.
us. It's a lot harder to line that
We'll
up
figure
when
it out. You
you're
guys get
remote
to enjoy
recording.
the remote version.
Good luck,
Good luck.
guys. Good luck. Good luck, babe. So, my question for you,
Yes.
Carly, is what do you think the next Beatles album would have been if
Ooh.
they had made another
Okay, so they're
album?
doing Abbey Road.
And it would have been around probably presumably, like, they just did Abbey Road. This probably would have come out early '70s kinda thing.
Okay.
I have a hot take, but I wanna hear yours first.
I'm trying to think of what's happening even, like, musically around that time, right? Like
Musically around this time, like, you're starting to see, punks coming up, you're starting to see, like, the Rolling Stones, you have The Who, you have, like, Led Zeppelin starting
yeah,
up,
so
like
maybe it'd be a bit
yeah.
harder, like, they would do
This is my answer. I
yeah,
think they do, like, a heavy metal kinda
yeah,
thing.
like and again, it wouldn't be, like, heavy metal in its purest form, but it'd be, like, how everything is influenced by that, right? Like,
Yes.
that scene in Daisy Jones and the Six where, like, the bassist is, like, sees a punk show and is like, "Well, we're fucked. We're not doing this."
We're done.
Like, I really feel
Yeah.
like they would be inspired by that in the way that, like, Paul was so inspired by counterculture, and surely, like, John Lennon is just, like, kicking it with, like, Warhol and then all the New York counterculture scene and that kinda
Yeah.
thing. So, I think we would either get a harder one or some kind of weird, like, Velvet Underground kinda thing that's, like, so, like, it's like Walk on the Wild Side where it's, like, very much, like
Yeah.
into its
Yes.
weirdness and its inaccessibility. Like, it revels in its inaccessibility, which they were
Yes.
getting around, but Paul wouldn't allow it, so I think there'd be something there.
Did I ever tell you that the day Lou Reed died, I locked myself in my bedroom and cried for 12 hours?
No.
It's a thing I did. Just my
How old were
truth.
you?
Don't worry about it. A teenager. I f I forget.
That's
I mean, that's
really,
the type of
really
thing you only
funny.
do. What year did he die?
I can look it up.
I forget.
I wanted to read that big biography about him, but it's like 800 pages. Yeah, 2013. So, yeah.
Yeah. Would've been the would
I remember when
would've been
Bowie died,
would've
I
been one
felt
or the
really
other.
sad, but, like, I didn't cry
Oh,
in my
yeah.
room for 12 hours. I can't hold that candle.
Yeah, it would've been 17, 16 or 17
Wow.
when Lou Reed died, which makes sense.
That's the
That would be
time
when
when
I locked
you
myself in
openly
my
weep for
room.
12 hours.
Yeah, and yeah, I would think that yeah, I think it would be more like Helter Skelter kinda going in on that, like,
Yes.
punk thing, and then also more of John Lennon's, like, tamer kinda hippie piece stuff, so it'd be, like, very disjointed.
Yes.
I think that, like, your Lou Reed Velvet Underground comparison is kinda neat.
Well, it seems like that's where
I think it
John
would be
wanted
like
to
a pop
go. Like, what the
yeah.
pop version of that is.
Yeah,
which would kill
so
Lou Reed. So maybe it actually is good that that didn't happen.
exactly,
'Cause all he wanted to
exactly.
do is be, like, inaccessible and yet was mad when he wasn't popular, which is
Yes,
actually so me.
and he's cool.
Which actually so me, being like, "Interesting that nobody
Yeah,
wants to that I'm not incredibly popular because of my niche history podcast."
I know,
Feels
I
like
feel the same
what a
way.
great episode. Thanks for all that research,
What a
Blair.
great episode. Oh my god, it's really fun. I really am, like I feel so connected to the Beatles
Me
now, like, I
too.
actually it's crazy. I think we do need to do one more episode because I feel like as much as that felt like so much fucking information, I'm still like, we missed huge
And there's a
things.
lot of drama, which is fun. Like, there's a lot of drama
Yeah,
when they break up, you know?
exactly. So I think we'll do breakup Yoko Ono assassination.
Yes.
Well, thanks for tuning in,
Guys, thank you for
guys.
listening. And we'll talk to you
And thank you so
soon.
much. We love you so
Love
much.
you. Bye.
Love you, bye.
Okay, I fucking killed it. We killed it, literally.
This podcast has been brought to you by the Sonar Network.